Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pelipper Tub Takes. We are live. We are all back from San Diego Regionals, and we are ready to talk about this event. It was a lot of fun, and I'm joined by three other incredible players. I am, of course, Adi, and I am joined by my co-host Alex. How are you doing, Alex?
Howdy, peeps. Let's get it started.
And then we have two special guests. We have Angel. How are you doing?
What's up? Doing great. How are you guys?
Doing fantastic. And then, of course, we have John. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm back in my apartment.
Nice. After a very exciting weekend. So, yeah. So we, of course, we're all at the San Diego Regional Championships. I didn't pull up the Victory Road thing. I'm going to pull it up. So we we're all at the San Diego Regional Championships that happened this past weekend. And that was probably the big event of the first big event of the new Scarlet and Violet games, which was really exciting. It was also the biggest regional, I want to say, ever. It might not be since the modern era, I guess is what people are saying. Angel, do you know if there was ever a bigger regional back in like the olden days?
Yes, for sure. Like the single elimination days, we've had around 800, 900 players at some of those regionals, and they're like, but those are single elimination, and it's a different type of tournament.
Okay. So, not the biggest regional ever, but at least the biggest regional since we've had paid entry since like 2014.
Yeah, for sure.
So, really, really exciting time. Angel and I both top cut the regional. I think Alex and John both went 7-3, right?
Yep.
7-3 gang.
So, I mean, I went 7-3 as well, but I did top cut. But yeah, it was a really good time. So I guess I should open it up to the floor. What did you guys think of the event as the first regional of Scarlet and Violet? What were your thoughts?
I'll pick it
It
off
ran
and
really well.
say that it was really fun. I had a great time, and the event was run well, I'd say. I'm gonna steal Angel's tweet from earlier. Shout outs to the staff. Like the first event of the new games, and I expected a lot more hiccups. I expected things to go a lot crazier, and there to be more issues, the tournament to run longer, and none of those things happened. It was all done very well.
Yeah, the, the staff are all great. Like it's, I feel like for a lot of tournaments, we usually hear like the negative stuff about the tournament, like things that went wrong, but not enough about how well the events ran and how great the staff were. And I think it's just good to just let them know that it was a great tournament. Everything went well. And for a tournament that we thought, all the logistics have been pretty hard to deal with because of the things with Scarlet and Violet, the glitches, then the lack of a locking of battle box, things would go wrong. And the tournament went by really quick for what we thought, it's a 10 round tournament. It went by pretty quick, and there were really very few hiccups.
Yeah, just echoing everything everyone's already said. It ran really smoothly. I think the round 10 ended at around like 9:30. Is that right?
I think I helped
PM.
everyone out.
Yeah.
I think it was almost a little.
Yeah.
Just a
Well,
little better,
okay. So if we didn't have that, maybe around 9. But like, I was talking with all the other players like in the middle of the tournament, and they were all like, I think 11 is like an optimistic. And then like, I don't know. I guess the game's just run that much faster. But like, even with all the hiccups, staff really just have like, I guess the head judge and what he delegated to all the other assistant judges was like, we can deal with this by having this as a solution. It was just very well organized, and I just thank the organizers and of course the staff for just making it real smooth. So, no complaints on my end there.
yeah.
Yeah, shout outs to Mike, like Nail said in the chat.
Fact. Go TO.
Absolutely. Just want to reiterate all of that. The judges were incredible the entire time. It really did run incredibly well for how crazy that the tournament could have been. There were a number of disconnects. There was no one really knew how to like connect to each other in Union Circle, for example, at the start of the game. Everyone figured it out. The staff was really helpful. The players were really helpful. Like everyone just kind of helped each other out for the early rounds until everyone kind of got the hang of it. I guess we should talk about how, if you didn't attend the regional, how regionals will actually be, how they will actually go, what you should expect a little bit now that we actually know what's happening. So if you're planning on attending like Liverpool regionals, for example, or you are planning on attending another North American regional in the future, what maybe to expect. And so, yeah, I guess, Alex, do you want to talk about what happened before round one?
Yeah. So they kind of set us all down alphabetically, by name, and so that brings me back to like 2015 Nats. Maybe they did a 2014 Nats too.
They did.
Some of the players in here that were playing back then, John and Angel might remember, where you sat down alphabetically across from all the people, and yeah, I don't know. It really brings me back because when I had played in like 2015 Nats, I was sitting by all the Alexes, and everybody was like, like, hey, how's it going? I'm Alex. And then they were like, oh, I'm also Alex. And then they'd be like, we got paired up against each other. And then the guy next to us is like, I'm Alex too. What? How did all the Alexes end up near each other? And, like, it's just stupid. So a lot of people don't realize that, they start getting their matches set up. They're like, this is who I'm playing? No, it's just the players meeting.
Okay,
and so
Alex,
this is how they, yeah.
How many Alex did you sit next to this time?
How many Alexes were near me?
Yeah.
I mean, on all sides of me, at least. I can't remember. I did not count how many Alexes there were.
So I remember I sat down and I knew the two people on my left were both named Adam, and the two people on my right were both named Alberto. And so I looked at my opponent, me being Adi, and I was like, "All right, hi, my name is Adi. Are you Alberto or are you Adam?" And he was like, "Neither. I'm Ahmed."
Ah, yes. That's so great.
Yeah. But it was really cool. And then, yeah, so I guess, sorry, I interrupted. You can keep going.
Sure. No problem. Yeah, so I mean, I'm drawing it all out, but yeah, they hand out the team sheets that you're going to be playing with. We had to submit ours at the night before, at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. the night before, and then that was so that they could print them all out on these sheets, and wouldn't you know it, the sheets have your team kind of in a line, a column with all the information, and to the right of that is it in, I don't know, I want to say like 8 other languages.
I think it's 5. I think
What?
it's
5 sounds way too few.
It is
I mean, I have it here. if you
English,
want it.
French, Italian, German, Spanish, Japanese, Korean. I have it
Okay,
on
so I was
screen
off
right
by 1. I was closer than Alex.
That's true. You got me there. So yeah, they got quite a few languages on there, which is pretty cool. There was a small issue in that the Terra types were in the same language that you completed your team sheet in across the whole row. I think that's relevant for John. John, you didn't play in English, right?
Yeah, so I play the game in Japanese, which means when I input the team sheet, I have to put it in Japanese because that's how it appears in the game. And so they haven't fixed this out yet, but they did basically I had to talk to a judge before I started playing and say, hey, I play the game in Japanese, so I don't have English Terra type or anything like that. And so what they did is that I have it here. They basically wrote the actual Terra type in the margins, and then they made a note at the bottom saying that it was my. So if you are playing in a different language, you are expected, I'm gonna guess, to talk to a judge and have them write it down in an appropriate language for your opponent to read. In this case, I only need to do it in English because I'm pretty sure most of my opponents knew how to do English. But I assume if this happens at Worlds or a international championship, you probably will have to call a judge every time they're I don't know what Terra types. And then they'll just write them down.
I would hope this is an Arcanine Labs issue because they were the ones who handled
It
all
is
of
an
this,
Arcanine Labs issue.
and that they can fix
It
it
is an Arcanine.
because this is going to be a problem at Liverpool regionals where most people are not playing in English, and there's going to be a lot of French, Italian, German, Spanish players who are attending, and then that's going to be there for basically everyone rather than just the people who are playing it Japanese, and also if you are a French player and you're playing as a Spanish player and they write down the team sheet, the Terra types in English, that might not actually be all that helpful for you. So
And I just want to say they are aware that this is a bug. This internally, they know this is happening. So they're hopefully going to fix it before some of those events happen. Maybe not in time for Liverpool, but I guess we'll see how they handle it. This is a fine on-the-spot fix, so as long as they have that.
This is a good time for it to be addressed. It's of all the regionals, it's good that we were the first ones where this problem came up, where it's less of an issue. It'd have been much worse if this happened in Liverpool as the first regional.
And as far as I know, it didn't hold up the event anything major, which is pretty good. They handled it well.
Yeah.
So the next step, they did our normal player meeting, kind of walked us through some things. Nothing for those that have attended live events, nothing unfamiliar after that. And from there, we kind of went to our first rounds and started to actually, for the first time, experience this Union Circle connection thing. And I actually had a round 1 issue that got resolved pretty easily, and for the rest of the tournament, things went smoothly. For the first round, though, I could not find my opponent in the Union Circle, so we just did a link battle, and we played 2 games in link battle, and it worked fine. No disconnect issues, no nothing. So that was no sweat. But then for the rest of the rounds, and especially in the later rounds, it was like as once both players knew what they were doing and they were familiar with the system, it went really quickly. You basically just put your Switch into the dock. Then while it's in airplane mode, connect to the internet. It just works. Don't ask questions. Then when you're in there, one of the players, usually player 1, but you can also just casually just say, I'll do it or you do it, creates the Union Circle room. And from there, you give the other person the code. You guys connect. Then you both search for a battle. You find each other, set up the rules, pick your team, pick your music, go. And it, once you knew all of the stuff that you needed to do, it was pretty quick, simple, and easy. But yeah, I had that round 1 hiccup, and then otherwise was fine. Did you guys have anything notable happen to you with your setting up of your games or connections?
No, I had a turn 1 DC, but that was it, and that's something you can easily just restart the game and play again. Other than that, no really hiccups from me.
I did have a a hiccup in the round 1. My opponent actually got the if you played online and you have shaky internet, you may have got hit with this, but he had the internet disconnect temp ban. So he couldn't play or he couldn't go online for 30 minutes. So I'm sitting there and I'm okay. So now you can't do Union Circle basically online anymore. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this scenario because this is the first time for me. So we had to call a judge over. Unfortunately, the judge we called over was actually a stand-in from TCG, and he did not know how to handle it. So he was like, okay, I'll go and make another judge aware of your situation. But of course, all the other judges are out putting out these little tiny fires everywhere else, right? And honestly, our problem was not that big of a deal. I ultimately was let's just play it wirelessly. That's probably what's going to happen. But I just, to be safe, I just sat there and waited for 20 minutes. Eventually, the head judge came over and was like, yeah, since this is not actually, to be fair, he did not disconnect, on the spot. He already had this from, a previous night of the laddering. And then I guess it just enacts the next time you start the game up instead of, on the spot. Yeah, basically, a head judge told us, okay, so this is not actually, you didn't disconnect in a game and it caused this issue. You should just play wirelessly. And after that, you should hopefully have no more ban. Because it's a 30-minute ban. It's not really big. I mean, after we got into it was 10 minutes anyway. That was my only major hiccup, pretty much in round 1 in the whole tour. I did have a couple turn 0 disconnects, what Angel was experiencing, I think. I'm not really sure what causes that. It's a pretty harmless DC since nothing actually happens other than you get to see each other's leads. And you just run back, pick the same ones, have it.
I heard though that you don't have to run the same leads.
You don't. You don't.
And that can get a little icky. For me personally, I would definitely gentlemen's to run it back with the same leads and the same mons that I had in the back. I didn't have that issue happen, but that's just. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing that we have to deal with.
There was a pair next to me in one of the Swiss rounds that did have that issue, and one of the players was visibly upset that the run back wasn't exactly the same, so he called a judge over. And yeah, the judge ruling is that if turn 0, turn one, whatever you want to call it, basically no moves get clicked, and it's a 4-4 game state disconnect, the game is void. So nothing from that game carries over, which means you're allowed to pick different.
Yeah, the judges went around before round 1. They were saying that you shouldn't be making gentlemen's agreements because there's no way to enforce it. So yeah, like yes, two players can do it, but no one's obligated to keep that gentleman's agreement.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was kind of my experience too. Was I had a couple of those disconnections, which are very annoying. I know, I forget if it was Rajan or Nails that was saying that like they had one set where they had 3 disconnects before game 1, and so like they both led one thing, and they both like counterleaded their opponent, and they counterleaded them again, and it was just like this crazy mind game because you've almost like played 3 games of Pokemon already. At least you know like what your opponent's thought process is on lead for the first 3 games, which is totally different than like that. Just adds another elements to it. In my experience, my round 1 was not super competitive, and I think we led the same thing, but I don't think we agreed to lead the same thing. But we had the disconnect, and then Alyssa, who was one of the judges, came by and said, like, this normally happens if one person is time skipping in the game, so they're like going and jumping ahead for days or whatever to I don't know, get different raids or something, and make sure that your game times are set to the same time zone. And of course, I am in Central Time, so my Switch was in Central Time, and I was playing Hector, who's a California player. His was in Pacific Time, and we set it to the same time zone, and we didn't have any issues. And then I occasionally, like, I would tell my opponents if they had said they had a history or they had been having issues of disconnects. Can you set your game to the Pacific Time zone? And then I never had any issues. That might be confirmation bias. I'm not 100% sure. I did have one other disconnect against Brian Yum, who I didn't tell that, and he, of course, is in Eastern Time, I assume. And so that, and then I had one with Wolf, who is also Eastern Time. And so I think that might be a solution, but I'm not 100% sure. Other people also have their creative solutions to it, and I think it might just be something that happens very rarely, and therefore all our solutions are subject to confirmation bias until we get official word from Play Pokemon.
Let me cut in here with a couple of questions. One first from me, actually. Adi, are you going to tell the story of your match against Wolf on this stream, or is that for another time?
I don't know.
Like, not right now, but you know.
Well,
but...
it is topical, but I had a disconnect at the very close to the end of the game against Wolf in the last round of the tournament, and we held everyone up because we had a disconnect before game 1 that prolonged it, and then we had a disconnect at the very end that caused us to go to sudden death. And this was my win in. He had nothing to play for, but this was my win in. So this was a very stressful situation for me and everyone who was watching. But that was the other disconnect issue that I had. And I guess I could talk. I'm probably going to talk about that more in the team report, where we talk about our tournament runs a little more in detail. But yeah,
definitely want to check that one out, especially because Adi only gave you the short end of it. He's going to jazz it up a lot more, making it sound a lot more interesting when he does it in the YouTube video. But like, it is a very funny story. Adi's match against Wolf, just like crazy all over the place, and his whole. I imagine Adi's like stress level was through the roof. That was just funny. Now, before we move on to other stuff, though, Adi, there was a couple of questions in the chat that I'm just trying to keep up with, so we're just going to rattle these off really quick. Scotty asked if we all used the same team. No, we should probably mention all of our teams. We could do that now, actually.
Yeah.
Angel and Adi use the same team, but Adi, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can see it on screen, all the top cut teams. So Angel ran King Gambit, Goldengo, Mimikyu, Pelipper, Taurus, Aquaform, and Amoonguss, and I ran the same one down here in 32nd. We were the 2 top cut. And then Alex, you ran the same team as, I think, as Jody Azzarelli, who got top 4.
Yep.
And John...
Yeah, I'll just mention those 6 really quick. I'll mention the 6 real quick. It was just like Palafin, Pelipper, Goldengo, King Gambit, Amoonguss, and Salamence. And then, John, what were you 6?
And then I was running something a little different from everyone else. I was like Dragapult, Pawmot, Goldengo, Amoonguss, Staraptor, and Indeedee.
And then these next couple of questions are a bit more on topic of what we were talking about in the last couple of minutes. Team Rocket Elite asks how were disconnects handled. Does anybody have a great answer for that? I mean,
I think we kind of already answered it. If it happens in game like turn 0, it's a null game, so you just kind of ignore that game. If it happens in the middle, I guess Adi will talk about that. I assume that's like more similar to his case.
So they have rules about this. They actually showed us the rule book, and this came up a lot at in the start of Generation 7. What's the second game? Omega Ruby Alpha. No, that's the wrong one.
Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon.
Ultra Sun,
Oh,
Ultra
yeah.
Moon. Yes, Dallas 2018 is the regional where we had like a million disconnects, and so we all got very familiar with those rules. I've run it a couple times. The rules are essentially if someone is leading 4-1, I think it's 4-1, 4-2, 3-1, where you get a game win, and any other situation, it's a tie, and it goes to the next game. And if you're tied 1-1 and you get a tie, it goes to sudden death. Or if you tie the first game and then you go 1-1, it goes to sudden death. And sudden death is this whole different set of rules. If you played back in Gen 7, you are familiar with like the sudden death rules from Timer as well. So it came up for a couple different things. Don't worry about it. Hopefully it doesn't happen to you. Yeah. So those are the rules for a disconnect, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sudden death's not too complicated. It's simply put, it is just the first person to have a mon advantage at the end of the turn. So, after the turn, if you're up 4-3, you win. 4-2, you win. If you both trade KOs and it's 3-3, it's the turn goes on or the game goes on till there is a mon advantage. Okay. Next question. Somebody mentions that they would have they wish that they made it easier to read the team sheets. I just wanted to cover this one really quick. Because there's a lot of text to take in. A lot of people were overwhelmed by how all the different languages. It's in this column, which is kind of not how we're familiar with reading the Pokemon teams, I guess. And I gotta say, what I ended up doing was I put my Switch case on top of the notebook, or on the not the notebook, but on top of the open team sheet to just cover up the other columns, so I could just focus on strictly the information I'm looking at. I did not take notes at this event. I think we're going to talk about that more in the open team sheet section that we're going to get to soon. But a notebook is also a really good way to just kind of get rid of all that declutter, or just declutter it, I guess. And then lastly, Scotty asked about, do Switch lights work with the dock? I think they don't, right?
I believe they... Well, I don't know.
They had special rules regardless. They had special rules.
They have special rules.
So I believe that maybe they do. The point I want to mention about Switch lights is that they said that if there is a Switch light at your game, to always have the regular Switch host, and if there are 2 Switch lights, good luck, it should be fine. That's what they said, pretty much. So that's just, I wanted to make sure that some of these things got addressed. Sorry for pausing the show, but we got to answer these questions,
Mm-hmm. And I think we covered most of the stuff we wanted to talk about. Logistically, most of the stuff we want to talk about as far as how the event ran. Again, it did actually run much faster than I thought it would, and there was a surprisingly...
That was awesome.
Yeah, I think that my round 10 was the only round that was held up by disconnections that were at the end of the round and game impact.
Literally because of you.
Literally,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, literally, I held up the tournament single-handedly. So yeah, that was pretty much it. I guess we can talk about open team sheets now. We did show you guys what the open team sheets look like, and maybe some strategies as to how to interpret them. For me, honestly, my take was that you just have to go through and look for the notable stuff, and maybe you should get practice looking at these sort of team sheets ahead of time, and so you can parse through it. And by that I mean, make sure you know any unusual Terra types, unusual items, unusual moves, whatever. It is easy to miss things. I have had opponents look at my team sheet and miss things. For example, we ran Terra, Grass, Tauros on our team. Let me see if I can find my team sheet on here. But we ran Terra, Grass, Tauros, Aqua, and I had a turn where my opponent went for Rage Powder. They Terra Electric the Rotom Heat, and Thunderbolted it. And then they saw my Terra animation, and they were just visually shocked. They were they were shocked, and then they looked at the team sheet, and they realized what was happening, and that they just burnt an entire turn. And so
you have to read.
You have to read. You will lose so many games if you don't read the team sheet.
I had that happen to me too. It was pretty much the same thing. I was I had a Terra Grass on my Palafin, and I was they're gonna click Rage Powder, or they can't click Rage Powder because I could Terra Grass at any point. They just kept clicking Rage Powder. And I'm okay. I mean, maybe they're just reading me. And then it got to the end of the game, and I was I finally Terra Grassed my Palafin, and they just were they looked at the sheet. They looked down, they were what? And I was oh my god. Why they are not reading? They are literally not reading. So stressful.
Yep. Yeah, that was in fact Alberta, who was in chat, who got bodied by the Terragrass Taurus. Um, yeah, so that's my take on team sheets. Just like make sure you synthesize the information as well as possible. It's much easier when you are like thinking about your plays to find the 2 Pokemon that matter that are on the field at any given time and see what they can Terra into, especially if your opponent hasn't Terra'd. Like keep referring to it as you need to. But I did not really have a problem with the formatting at all in terms of like actually getting the information into my head. But it is an unusual format, and if it does seem like something that would disorient you a little bit, try to get familiar with it before your event, I guess. And I think we'll get used to it really quickly as we go to more regionals and as these become commonplace at locals as well.
And we have them here on this website, so if you want to just go look at the top San Diego teams, you can practice just getting the hang of looking at those sheets. But yeah, let's throw it over to John, then Angel, and then I'll give my takes on like open team sheets with respect to the event and just how it went out. John, what do you got to say about it?
Overall, I think I liked it a lot. One thing I do think it's like, I know you probably aren't thinking about this too much, but I do notice that like there's no Chinese like at all on the team sheet, which I wonder if that's like just because they ran out of column space or something, and then the other languages are just the more common ones. But I do think that not having Chinese on the sheet is like a bit of like a detriment to the Chinese player base, just because they probably need to take a little more like brain power to comprehend what the English, unless they play their game in English. But if you've watched the stream, I think Chongjin was up there as the player like perspective. His game's in like simplified Chinese, so he's more comfortable obviously reading that. I think that's something that maybe they're thinking. I'm not sure. Don't ask me.
Yeah, like how many languages does the game support at this point?
It supports 10.
So I'm surprised that they just like at the very least
it's like 10 or 9. It's like 10 or 9. And Chinese has 2 different scripts, so I know it's like a lot to handle. And like Chinese is notoriously like scrunched together. I mean, so is Japanese. On the team sheet, Japanese doesn't use any kanji. Usually fine. I guess Chinese is a little different because it's all kanji. But that's one thing I would like to see going forward. Like, just because China doesn't really have a circuit doesn't mean you leave it off. Maybe there is like, maybe like in a Hong Kong or Taiwan regional where they're trying to implement the same open team sheet rule. That's up to TPC because they run that scene instead. But I would like to see Chinese on like at least at Worlds for sure. That's just something for me at least as a Chinese.
No, that's.
Other than that, I do think that aside from not reading the sheet, you do have to like make sure they tell you this too in like the player meeting and all, or like the rules, is to make sure the team sheet you're looking at matches what the player is actually doing. Because even small errors, like you miss that it's Sandvale instead of Sandstream, using that as an example, that's like a huge difference. So like even if you understand that the first word is Sand and that it should be Sandstream, it being Sandvale on the paper, if you're talking about a Tyranitar, for example, that would be like an error, and you should call a judge for that. It's just the ruling on that, and I think it's the same as like with team sheets in the past, where your team sheet is like the thing to follow. So if you can't follow that, then the mon gets removed. I think it's right.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I would say just keep in mind when you're looking at a team sheet, don't like. I guess don't like spend too much time looking at it, but that's generally what I have another thing, but I'll let Angel speak first and see if he hits it.
So I think I love the open team sheet. I enjoyed playing with it. It's a different type of game. Like you're playing the game pretty differently. You're building teams differently with it in mind. But I think the big thing was just processing the information on the team sheet and being able to process it within that short amount of time. Like you can read the things that's on the team sheet, but it's hard to process like what's going on there. One example that came to me was I was playing Santi, and then when I hit him with the Chilling Water Tauros onto his Dondozo, he was like, "Oh, that's a thing," and not understanding why the move is on like the team. Maybe he didn't process. Okay, that's what that situation comes up for, and realizing where these decisions come up versus your team, and it takes a little bit to like look at a team and process what's going on there. I think that's a big thing that comes into play when you're playing open team sheet, is more than just knowing what's there, but like understanding the context of what are the decision makings of putting this on the team for. rather than just, oh, they just have this move.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you can look for simple combos, and like those might be a bit more noticeable. You see the Scarf Tatsugiri has Soak, so you look to see, oh, they got a
Yeah.
Palm out, they've got a Meowscarada. That's what they're going for. But when you have some of these more rogue picks, like Chilling Water on the Tauros, they might not see. And then that you bring in the Tauros, they maybe they glossed over it. They were like, okay, I don't really know. Like when I see a Tauros, they are clicking, Raging Bull or Close Combat. These are the moves I expect the Pokemon to be clicking when it's on the field. And then all of a sudden, even though the move's there, they might just not know the intention, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
so make sure just like to read and process, like Angel was saying.
Yeah, no, it's a completely different game. Like before, you're like trying to conceal information without open team sheets, you know, figuring out, oh, okay, what can they have? But now it's you have all the information in front of you. It's what you do with that information now that's different. So it's a different type of game, and people have to adapt to playing with open team sheet. Otherwise, I really liked it. I thought it was a cool way to play Pokemon, and I wasn't really used to it. 'Cause I didn't play much during COVID, so I didn't get to deal with open team sheets during that era. And playing it here at a regional, it was pretty interesting, and honestly, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, so this is like why I love just the name of the podcast, Tub Takes, is we get to have the good ones and the bad ones. Thank you, Angel, for bringing your take. And now I can bring mine.
True.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just so boring, man. Like, open team sheets.
I don't know. I think it was fine.
I had a great time playing the event, but there are certain times where you get just to like look at a Pokemon and say, I know exactly what this is going to do, and I can cover literally all of the options because of this super certainty. Something that happened in my round one was I had a Pelipper sitting across from Indeedee or Armarouge. I hate telling Pokemon stories, so I'll try to make this one short. But I had a Pelipper across from an Indeedee Armor. The Indeedee's only attacking move was Dazzling Gleam. The Armor had Expanding Force and Armor Cannon, and then they had like Trick Room, Wide Guard, Follow Me, Helping Hand, Heal Pulse, like just some standard support moves. So I brought in my Pelipper, and I clicked Wide Guard for like 3 turns in a row, and they can't do literally anything because the rain is up, and I'm blocking all these spread moves. I don't have to play around. Does it have, a different, like, is it Psychic or something? Is it, I know that's not that common, but like, does it have Energy Ball to hit my Palafin for damage? There are like scenarios where you have to respect the potential options, and it's just like you can play with such certainty in open team sheet. And while I had fun with it, it just does it. Like I think this is the thing I will agree with Angel the most. It's a different game, it's very close to what we like normally play with Pokemon, but I don't know. I also got to like make plays where you look at the sheet and you're like, this Pokemon doesn't have Protect, so I will safely double target into it. And so Protect does seem to be a little bit more valuable in open team sheet because of reasons like that. But yeah, and then lastly, this is just kind of a side note on the topic is I didn't take notes. I always take notes at tournaments, especially majors. And so for the first time, I was just like, you know what? I want to spend as much time as I can processing the information on the team sheet, the open team sheet. I don't want note taking to get in the way. And I got to say, I really enjoyed that. The game just felt a lot more, I don't know, I just felt like more in control, less worried about like noting down things. I was just so in the zone and focusing on what was on the sheet, I guess.
I'm glad you come over to the not note taking side.
Let's
I
go.
stopped taking notes like a couple of years ago. Not because like I didn't want to, but more like I thought it was getting in the way of like me making my decision quick enough. And I think, especially with open team sheet, because usually I'm like one of those people who lock in their moves. Like I'm kind of like aggressive player. I just put in my moves. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm gonna do, and you're not gonna. But at least like in this format, this tour, I did time out like at least twice because I was thinking about the team sheet and I was like, what am I supposed to do for this? How am I going to account for this? So it made me feel like I had to be a little more careful thinking about just like team sheet and stuff. So it kind of begs the question, like if you're taking notes at a tour like this, open team sheet tour, you really have to think about, can you handle doing all these things while still thinking about what you want to do and then actually doing it in your game? Because I think that's like something that a lot of I won't say like new players do, because I usually don't see new players taking notes. But like if you're a growing player and notes are helping you thinking about your process and reflecting on the event, that's awesome. But I think at this kind of event with open team sheet, they might get like very you might get very weighed down by the amount of information you are carrying in your brain versus what you're writing down versus what you have to do actually put it in the game.
Let's go. Yeah.
So I would say just make sure, like, to practice that if you want to keep taking notes. I saw some people do it and they were perfectly fine. But if you're like kind of new to note taking or new to competitive in general, I would say maybe lay off the note taking for a sec and just look at the team sheet and see what you can get out of that. And then I had this happen too, and I'm sure it happens to everybody. It's like if your opponent asks you what they can do better about like either team building or like they maybe just lost the set and they're just like, what did I do wrong? Then you're not obligated to answer them, but I usually help them because like I was there too at one point, and I did that maybe once or twice. Sure. I did that maybe once.
No, that's a good thing to
Ultimately, make sure you're just budgeting your time. It's like a time management thing. It's not like a skill you normally have in like closed team sheets since you're actually going to need to take notes on all their stuff they have. Like, it's going to be hard to remember all that in closed team. But an open team sheet, you have all. So don't worry about notes, is my take.
They told us ahead of time that they would be getting all the team sheets for Top Cut. That was a big reason why I was planning on taking notes. I missed that part of the players' meeting. I was apparently like 2 minutes late. And so I was not told that and was taking notes the entire time thinking that we would have to get all the information about potential opponents before Top Cut. And I played a bunch of players who made Top Cut, so it would be valuable for both myself and my friends. Turns out that was not the case. And I definitely agree it was not worth it to take notes on it was definitely not worth it to write down everything. My note-taking process in open team sheet tours, because I had practice from like Players' Cup, was I want to write down my opponent's leads, their back ones, so I know what they brought last game and can adapt accordingly. And I want to write down any like notable speed tiers or any notable damage rolls that I think would come up. And that's just about it. Like, I don't think that anything else is really relevant because everything else is already in front of you. So, maybe there is some merit. Like, one of the arguments I heard from one of my friends was like, okay, but then if I play your opponent, then I'll have 2 minutes more to look at their notes. I don't think that's actually that important. I think really it just comes down to like, do notes really help you? Whereas in the past, like having notes on your opponent was super valuable. And so this like network of gathering information made a huge difference. Now that really is just not the case at all. And that is one of the benefits of open team sheet. Although I do generally agree with Alex that like, I think I prefer to play a closed team sheet. I think I like building creative teams and not having those kind of go to the wayside. Although obviously our teams are not super stock standard by any means. The creativity manifests itself very differently in open team sheet. And we'll talk about the team choices in a minute. I want to answer Justin's question in chat where he asked what we thought about the ladder heroes like Maluka and Emilio doing really well in this tournament in open team sheet despite primarily practicing on ladder. To which I also want to say, like, I think good players are always good. It doesn't matter the format. It doesn't matter whether it's open team sheet or closed team sheet. They'll find a way to win. What I will say is that I played basically no ladder games with my team before the tournament, and I think Angel might not have played any ladder games with the format, period, before the tournament.
Yeah, I played 0 games. The tournament was my first game of the format.
and as a result of that, like that isn't possible outside of open team sheet, because if in open team sheet format, you don't have to know what your opponent, you don't have to figure out what your opponent is trying to do. It's all right there in front of you. And so if you don't play games in the format, and even if you aren't super familiar with the format, as long as you know what all the Pokemon stats are and like what all the moves do and all that stuff, you can kind of put it together, maybe a little slower, and maybe you don't have that sort of like gut feeling that allows you to call what your opponent does a little better. But I think that it makes it a lot more forgiving to players who don't want to ladder a ton. That being said, practice is still practice. Good players are still good players, and it doesn't matter how you practice as well, as long as you are, like actually good at the game. And that I think that is a bigger reason for Maluka and Emilio's success. They just had good teams, they refined it, and they are 2 of the best players in the world. And I don't think their laddering, I don't think that fact that they laddered a lot necessarily means that is the best way to succeed in open team sheet formats.
So
yeah, I echo most of the statements. I echo most of the statements. I think it's just the big thing of when you play a lot of games in general, whether it's ladder or just playing against friends, just having like situational awareness of like all the things. Like when you play like thousands of games, a lot of situations happen to you and you're ready for them. Whereas if you're not laddering as much, the situations are new and you're trying to like deal with them as they come. So like a big difference for me as someone who played 0 games, I think a lot of my mistakes throughout the tournament were I was put in situations where I wasn't comfortable dealing with, I wasn't used to, and that's what came back to bite me at the end. Whereas something like where Emilio or Maluka, they've probably played millions of games at this point, and just they know their situations well, and they can deal with any odd situation that come their way. And practice is practice. When you play a lot of games, you see a lot of things, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's just that they have like familiarity with the situations, and another thing that can be kind of important is like player tendency. Um, like sometimes you look at players like Maluka and Emilio, and maybe you see them get a read right, and you're like, man, they always get the reads right. How do they do that? How do they always know? And I think that it's because they've played so many games that they know player tendency. They know, they look at a situation that they've been in before, and they say, yeah, I feel like 9 times out of 10 when I played against this kind of situation on the ladder, they protect Goldango. And so I'm going to double the other slot. And like they get a lot out of those reads. They get a lot out of those turns because they know how players tend to play. I guess it. You might look at a turn and say that's a 50-50, and it's like, well, again, 7 out of 10 times I played against that on ladder, they protected here. So I think that just having the reps in, just the repeated games can really add up that way. Another thing that I want to mention though is just like a side note, the fact that Angel hadn't played any games before the tournament and top cut, just it's a sign that we're playing Pokemon again. I love it. I love it here. We're Angel can just take all that old school knowledge and just be like, okay, I'll apply it to what we're doing now, whatever. I can figure it out. And it's the same thing, seeing Jody was actually playing games and putting in a bit more of a grind to it. And that's why he did better, Angel. Eat shit. But just kidding.
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
No. But Jody, went really deep and is a player that when was the last format Jody played before this? 2016.
2017 briefly.
2017 briefly.
16 was the first the last time he played a real season.
Yeah. And so the fact that, after 6-7 years or whatever, Jody can just come back and just pop off is just awesome to me because it just shows that certain aspects of the game don't change. I think Dynamax changed aspects of the game the most, and I mean I'm a number one Dynamax hater, but yeah, it just it, it's awesome that we're just playing Pokemon again. Yeah. And yeah, I guess. Oh yeah, I wrote down here that, but we already covered it. Burns' question about Emilio and stuff. So yeah, I think that's mostly. Oh yeah. One more thing that Adi mentioned that I think we should talk about just a little bit more is the teams going live online before Top Cut. I think that this was overall a good change. I'm here for it because it levels the playing field with respect to scouting. And especially with open team sheet, you could get some real disparity if somebody was just oh yeah, no, I wrote down everything they had. Here's literally mon for mon, move for move, what you're going to be going up against in Top Cut, versus somebody who just didn't have the connections. However, it does mean that while some of my least favorite games are those super over prepped Top Cut sets, those get even worse because it is just open everything. You could just if this was a smaller event and it was top 8 with all the sheets posted, you could practice your whole bracket for the night before. At the very least, most importantly, play your top 8 match and play against both of the people that you're going to be playing against the top 4 in practice sets, and just have a very good idea of what you could be expecting to face. And that just gets icky to me personally. But overall, I do like the even playing field aspect of open information on the website. That is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Not having we would have benefited regardless, but having an even playing field where people don't have to deal with a massive networking is very good for the game.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
I will point out that the open team sheet for cut is something that Japan Nats has done pretty much for the last few years. I think maybe they've always done it. I'm not sure.
Not always, but since 16 at least.
Yeah, since modern era. Most of the modern era, they've definitely been doing open team sheet cut. And it's notorious because we all think about the Japanese circuit as like, it's all closed sheet. It's all like, high risk best of one. That's why they have like a very different like team building and play style. They play a lot more, I would say conservatively, since it's best of one mistake can lead to like a loss kind of out. But at least in Top Cut, they get to play the open team sheet best of 3 format. So in that respect, I am curious to see what will happen at like events where more Japanese presence is there, and I wonder if they will be a little like more successful at utilizing their time for prepping. I'm not actually sure because I don't talk to the Japanese that much, but we all talk about how they're popping off on ladder all the time, and this goes back to the whole like they have the experience, the matchup experience. Japanese players play the online ladder so much in game. That's why the top 30 is always dominated by a bunch of Japanese players. And Maluka was there too last season. So I do think that just like grinding the ladder is like a way to produce results. It may not work for everyone, and maybe not everyone has the time investment for it. But it's really just like a case of, I think, player diff. They just see so many things that now they just know how you're going to handle this specific scenario with the tools you have. They know your tools, but you may not have the experience to match. That's like something I think I also wonder about. Maybe the Japanese player base, we could learn still more things about their open team sheet from them too.
Yeah, the player diff is a real thing. Like, I think Emilio and Maluka are like on a different level. They're just very, very good, and it shows. They're just built different.
Mm-hmm. And I guess on that note, we should talk about the results of the tournament. And so, as we alluded to, and as you can see on screen, the winner of the tournament was Jae-Suk. He was a Korean player who moved to Canada, I think, in 2017, 2018. He had won Korean Nationals prior to that in 2016, and then kind of disappeared, and then came back onto the scene for Players Cup 1, got second place at Players Cup 1, did quite well in at least one of the other Players Cup, forget which one, at least in the North American side. He didn't quite make it to the global finals. And then I believe this is his first live event since 2017 Korean Nationals, or maybe Worlds, I'm not sure. And he got all the way to the finals. He also revealed on Twitter that he not only had the success here, but also had been grinding a lot. And he was the guy with the 90% GXC on Pokemon Showdown who topped the ladder, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. 59-5 is crazy. So huge congrats to Maluka. And I think you can see his team. Do we have his team? We have his open team sheet, I guess. But yeah. So, what do you guys think about the results of the tournament and I guess how Maluka did?
Well, I really wasn't shocked to see that type of team win. We saw it creep up on ladder a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and Baxcalibur, Salazzle just all like infested everywhere, and people realized, okay, Baxcalibur is a really good mon. Glaive Rush is an insane move. I think the big surprise of the team was the Terra Poison on the Garganackle, and I didn't get to see the interview. I think he explained why it was Terra Poison. I can't even process why it was Terra Poison, but that was a cool and interesting thing. The big thing about the results is just, the abundance of Pelipper and Tauros, which I guess most of us had a hand in doing. But other than that, I guess the other big thing is the lack of Murkrow in cut. Like, that didn't surprise me, but it surprised most other players.
Right? Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little more later.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. If you guys want to transition, I guess the other thing I do want to talk about Maluka's team a little bit more, real quick, because this like Tauros back stuff, we covered it a little bit in the previous episode where we talked about what to expect, but it did make a really big showing. There were 6 Baxcalibur in Top Cut. That is more than the number of Dondozo in Top Cut. And of course, we talked the version that Kyle and that Monkey used to win the online tour was present. We see, I think it was Chase, and there was one other player who used, it was in Mars, who used almost that exact team to do really well. We see the version that Maluka used to do really well, and we see, I think there was a couple others, like Scott had his own take on it. So there were a bunch of different variants of this team that people have been building out after people like saw Maluka do so well with it on ladder, and it is cool to see like how new archetypes form sort of organically, and how you can still do well even with the team that you've just been developing even after it kind of gets out into the open. Okay, that's all I had to say about Maluka's team. Let's talk about Pelipper, because I know you guys love talking about Pelipper. Pelipper and Murkrow. This is the Murkrow Hate Club. Earlier, let me see if I can find the tweet. Donald tweeted out a poll that was asking how many Murkrows do we think are going to be in Top Cut.
Grab your poll too. Like, I mean, they probably got like similar-ish results.
So Donald asked on Twitter, and of course he took this from my YouTube channel, and I asked how many Murkrows will be in Top Cut.
I think you took it from Donald's Twitter, right?
That is definitely not what happened. And I definitely tweeted.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely.
We can settle this in court.
I do have the Discord logs, and I can confidently say that my YouTube channel viewers are smarter than Donald's Twitter followers, because only 39% of people said there would be 9+ Murkrow in Top Cut. Who said there would be 9+? Okay, and 51% of people on Donald's Twitter poll said there would be 7 or more, as compared to. Okay, it's about the same. A lot of people said 7+.
Really out here spreading misinformation. Huh?
Okay, so wait, what percent got this right?
So there were 2 Murkrow in Top Cut, and 7.8% of people on Donald's Twitter feed and 9% of people on my YouTube channel got that right. So about the same. About 8 or 9% of people figured it out. That Murkrow is not a good Pokemon. I thought personally that I think I voted 3 or 4. I had a little more faith in it, just because prior to this tournament, it was everywhere on every online tournament. It is maybe like the easiest team to build. It was one of the first teams that got really popular. People had a lot of practice with it. But yes, it is maybe like it does feel like a week 1 team. And while it's still very powerful, it's still something you have to account for. I faced it like 3 or 4 times in this tournament. It is kind of a shit line.
Mid-crow.
Very mid. The way the Mon functions, it's so linear and it doesn't really do anything oppressive, and it's so easy to take advantage of. And then when a Mon like that is such high in usage, it's gonna get overtaken. It's so easy to identify. Okay, this is how I beat this, and I'll run with it. And for a regional, especially the first regional of the season, I didn't think that would be sustainable for a Mon like Murkrow. It's still a good, it's still an okay Mon. I'm not trying to say it's a bottom tier, it shouldn't be used, but it was not as good as its usage suggested.
To me, it's just like every time I look at a Murkrow results page, I'm always like, okay, is it Tailwind, Haze, Foul Play, Taunt? Oh, it's Tailwind, Haze, Foul Play, Taunt. And for me, as like, the player who's like always using the whack choices, really justifying what is this Pokemon doing? Like, what can it offer me in a team position? I really think that right now it's just that Murkrow, like Adi said, it's just really easy to pick up and just click Tailwind, have a Haze button, Foul Plays really damage, Taunt. But I think there are some other strengths that Murkrow has that just aren't being explored. I think at the very beginning of like the format, like when it was announced, I was trying Murkrow too, and I like got off it really fast because I was like, no. Foul Play is not doing like anything. If I were to run this Mon again on a different team, I gotta be running Brave Bird.
Let's go.
That's gonna transition really nicely into the Pelipper talk, because I think a major part of why the Pelipper teams, or just Pelipper in general, really, like started cropping up and doing really well, is because they had really strong Flying Stab to spam. And Murkrow has it, but nobody had it in like cut or anything. So I really just think it's like you have to weigh your options a little better and think about what can this Pokemon do, not just like support one in Murkrow, but also like offensive. And I think that's something that Murkrow players might have to reconsider, especially as we move into the different series. But yeah, let's kick it over to the other people who are talking about Pelipper, because obviously I'm not that.
Okay. No, I want to talk about Murkrow.
I've got more to say about Murkrow. Go for it.
Okay,
right. I'll get in there.
Let's go Murkrow slander.
So, all right, I'm not done shitting on Murkrow. So, the Mon does have a higher attack stats than Talonflame, so you should be clicking Brave Bird on it. Why not, dude? do some actual damage. And yeah, flying type damage. I think our kind of team building group as a whole kind of identified as like a good way to do neutral damage, and especially with Terra, I think neutral damage is really strong. Um, it is, yeah, it's just really strong to have consistent high damage output that isn't going to get overwritten by Terra. I think a lot of the meta was falling into like fire types turning into, water or grass, just fire, water, grass, kind of cycling, going in a circle. You're like fire, water, grass, fire, water, grass, fire, water, grass, and those just all get hit by flying, especially the grass. And so I'm going to take credit for that. I think I got everybody on that. That was actually all me, by the way. Like, literally everybody in our team building group was using flying type damage. That was because of me. John was doing different stuff. John was
doing different stuff in the same parallel. Like, I was in the lane next to you, bro.
John was in the lane next to me clicking reckless brave words with Star Raptor. So I got to respect that. John's been doing that.
I gave you the Sharp Beak idea, right?
True. Sharp Beak? Yeah, I'll give the credit to you. So then the other thing, though, that I want to throw back to Murkrow, just to continue showing you guys how bad it was, is that while it did make 2 appearances in the top 32, they both lost in top 32. So, yeah, the Mon made it there, and then after that point, it's just too predictable. It's just too, it's just bad.
It is the most reliable speed control, right? You're always going to get Tailwind up if you want it. It's really hard to stop them from doing that. And I think there's 2 things that make it worse. The first is that people learned how to play against Dondozo, and it wasn't just going to be Haze. Haze was a solution. It's very easy to put Murkrow on your team, slap it on, say, haha, I click Haze, everyone clap, and the Dondozo player forfeits. It's not really what happens. Haze is a part of a solution. There are other ways to deal with it, and at least from like our team, for example, we had, which we'll talk about a lot more in the team report, we had a lot of other solutions to Dondozo that didn't involve clicking Haze. I think that the other thing is that there is a huge uptick in priority moves that in these teams, right? So you see the team that JSOC used is really, really good at abusing things like Ice Shard, things like Shadow Sneak on Mimikyu, things like Aqua Jet on Tauros, things like, I think he had Sucker Punch on Meowscarada. I'm not sure about that one. So, like, it doesn't actually care about speed control that much. And then, of course, Garganackle really doesn't care about speed control. You look at Jody's team, which is Palafin, right? Palafin clicks Jet Punch, and it does a lot of damage and doesn't really care. And he also has things like King Gambit that clicks Sucker Punch. His team doesn't really care about you clicking Tailwind because you just have priority moves. Same with, Gavin's team out in top 16, which is also a Palafin team. And even, like, our team, to some extent, or you have Trick Room, right? And you have Mimikyu, and you can click Trick Room, and that really hurts Murkrow as well. You see the Indeedee teams that have Trick Room. You see the Metagame Mimikyu team that has Trick Room. Our team has Trick Room. So people just figured out a lot of ways to really, really easy ways to beat Murkrow that happen to fit onto existing archetypes or teams. And I think that made it really poorly positioned into the metagame. And its utility of, this is a Tailwind setter that also beats Dondozo, was kind of diminished. So that's my Murkrow take. It still is a good Pokemon in terms of doing the 2 things that are clicking Tailwind and Haze, but we're at a point in the meta where clicking Tailwind is not nearly as good as it used to be, and clicking Haze is not the only way of dealing with Dondozo. All right, now we can talk about Pelipper.
Pelipper! This was all my idea.
It was all your fault.
Yeah, it is your fault.
So, here's the thing about Pelipper. There were, I think, 7 in Top Cut, but just looking at the 7 in Top Cut and looking at who is in Tub Nation, right? Jody's in Tub Nation, Aaron is not, Gavin is in Tub, Zeke is not, Cedric took a team from Tommy Cooling, who is in Tub, me and Angel are both in Tub. I think it was 5 of the 7 were people who either are part of our our team building group, or got the team from someone in our team building group. And so while Pelipper had a really big showing, part of that is because the people we work with were really high on Pelipper for various different reasons, and we all did really well. And so I guess I know Angel and I are going to talk a lot more about what our Pelipper did in our team report, and But I guess, do we want to talk about like the traits that make Pelipper good?
So I can kind of just list off some quick ones that Pelipper does really well with, and that's, as I already mentioned, flying type damage is really strong in the meta. Water type damage is also really cool. Something that's cool about Pelipper is that it's really good into those Annihilates, those pesky Annihilates, where they often Terra Fire, and you can just kind of blast it. And Hydro Pump just does a lot of damage. You just got to be willing to click it. And I mean, come on, don't be afraid. Hurricane, as Dane mentioned there, is just a really good move. Gavin also mentioned this in his stream interview, where Rain lets you click some really powerful buttons. Thunder, Hurricane moves with high secondary effect chances that can be really disabling. Getting hit by, like, you guys only had a single Hurricane. I was playing with Jody's team, which had 2 Hurricanes, and the number of turns you can get when you are clicking Hurricane all game by just getting that confusion, getting them to self-hit, it's amazing. And then on top of that, Pelipper has Wide Guard with one of the best typings to use it, funnily enough, in this current metagame. Some of the best spread moves are Earthquake, Heat Wave, Make It Rain, and maybe there's another one I'm forgetting. But Pelipper switches in very well on all of these. It resists steel, fire, it's immune to ground. So it's using Wide Guard very supportively as opposed to very selfishly. Like, you know, maybe a better example of a selfish one would be like Armor Rouge. It uses Wide Guard definitely to like support its team, but it doesn't want to switch in on an Earthquake. It doesn't want to switch in on a Snarl. Those are moves that are going to hurt it and annoy it. But Pelipper is clicking Wide Guard to support the friends, and Pelipper is just very good at doing that, supporting its friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a pretty friendly mon. Hurricane Hydro just, it's a lot of damage. You want a good water type. In every format, having a good water type is an insane amount of value. And then on top of that, at least the way we built the team, it supports all the good steel types. Having Goldango and King Gambit and Rain is just really, really good for those 2 mons. And in particular, I think all the Pelipper and Cut also had a King Gambit on the team. It's just really good at supporting the steel. You don't need a Swift Swimmer. All you really do is need to support a good steel type and then maybe have a good water damage dealer somewhere else. And Pelipper is a great partner for all of that. And being able to hit a Mungus really hard is very nice.
True.
I did not realize that every single Pelipper had a King Gambit on it. That is actually crazy, but yeah, it makes sense. There aren't only so many ways of hitting it, and those ways are usually grounded, fighting, ground, and fire types, right? So it really does cover all of King Gambit's weaknesses. It has perfect synergy with it.
That's actually a good use of the Cut Explorer tool, Lottie, if you want to try and show that off.
Okay, I haven't used this yet. We're doing this live on stream, San Diego Top Cut Explorer. Let's go ahead and click King Gambit.
No,
okay.
Pelipper, same difference. We're talking about Pelipper. Go to Pelipper.
Fine. Yeah, okay. So we see 3 Damp Rocks, 2 Life Orbs. The Life Orbs from me and Angel. 1 Eject Button, that was Gavin. 1 Citrus Berry, I don't know who that was.
Eject Button was not. That was probably Cedric with Tommy's team.
I thought Gavin was on Eject Button.
No, Gavin runs Damp Rock.
Oh, wait, sorry. He was on. Sorry, he had the Amoonguss. That was cool. Yes, it was Cedric who was Eject Button. We see 5 Terra Grass and 2 Terra Fairy. Again, the Terra Fairies were me and Angel, and we'll talk extensively about that. I Terra my Pelipper more than any other Pokemon on the entire team. I think, so if you want to hear about that, look out for the team report coming out next week. But yeah, we the Terra Fairy was crazy. A lot of them are Terra Grass because you want it's just good defensive typing to still get rid of your electric weakness, and also get around to Mungus and hit it with Hurricane or hit the partner with a Hydro Pump. So it does have that going for it. And then we see really only 4 moves, and then occasionally you can drop Wide Guard or Tailwind for something else, but like it basically only ever has 4 moves. And King Gambit, Amoonguss, Goldango are the 3 main partners. And then, interestingly enough, 3 different rain abusers. So we see Palafin. I honestly, Dragonite is a rain abuser too. But 3 water types that it pairs with, in Palafin being the most common. We ran Paldea and Tauros, the water form, as our like rain abuser of choice. And then the Dreadnought that got top 4. So 3 different water types that go with it, as well as like the Salamences and Dragonites that get to click Hurricane really freely as well. So I guess 2 different ways of abusing rain. on the team, on top of giving your Gholdengo and King Gambit really free reign over your opponent's fire types. This is a cool tool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, so I guess we should credit who made it. Because it's actually, is it not listed on the page at all? I'll be responsible for that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, whoever made it, good job. Excellent
Yeah,
tool.
that's awesome.
We will be using it again.
Let's see. It is. Adi was supposed to, keep the podcast going, but you know what? Whatever.
Okay.
I already found it. So, no. You're too late, bro. You're too late. Shout outs to Stuart R, who their Twitter is like at Stalruth, STALRUTH, who created this tool for looking at all the top cut Pokemon, and like they're I guess because we have open team sheet data, you can just do so much with that. That's kind of crazy.
It's true. Sorry, Alex. I got nerd sniped. I'm just gonna look at these data for the rest of the podcast, and you're gonna have to.
Right? I know. Though they did a great job.
Delete it. Wow, I did not realize that most Amoonguss were gonna be Rocky Helmet. That's super weird to me. We were on Citrus Berry. We thought it was the best item, and then 9 out of 14 are Rocky Helmet. That's crazy.
I think it's an overcorrection.
It's the 2014
for
effect, bro.
I think it's an overcorrection for mouse save. It was just everyone overreacted to that.
Yeah, no, Mega Kang isn't that big a deal.
True.
True.
It's not that good. We don't have to.
I think if we look at Mousehold, were there any Mousehold in cut?
There were.
Lorcy. Well, I know Lorcy had one.
Okay,
He had
but did it
Mousehold.
have population bump?
There are 4 Mouseholds in
No.
cut. And if we're only looking at the ones next to Annihilate, only one of them had population bomb.
Okay.
There was
So,
one that was not
definitely
on
an
Annihilate team.
overcorrection.
Actually,
Definitely
the one
an
on an Annihilate that was not on an Annihilate team also did not have population bomb. So, yeah, there you go.
That's crazy.
Interesting.
So, yeah, this is a really cool tool. It's also a great example of something that if you guys wanted to submit questions about, like if you were like, oh yeah, pull up this pun and like tell us what you think about the partners for that Pokemon, because otherwise Adi will get lost in this tool and talk about it for the rest of the whole podcast. So give him a direction. Make sure that you don't just let him go free reign, otherwise we will lose him. Also, I apologize that I keep getting distracted by my cat. My cat is crazy. Okay. I'm gonna keep pushing us in a direction though. If you guys have questions about the Top Cut Explorer thing, let us know. We might come back to it as we talk about more of the Mons and the meta, because that is actually the next section. Just talking about going forward. We have here, like, how will the meta change, and what do you guys think of Series 1? I included the second part. What do you think of Series 1? Because it is dead. It's dying. I'm so sad. Oh, man. I'm going to miss it. Is there a URL? I'll go ahead and drop it in the chat here.
So,
Yeah, you beat me to it.
I guess one thing I want to talk about, when we're talking about, because, I'm a huge nerd, when we're talking about what to expect going forward is usage statistics, because we do have usage stats on what were the most common mons. And the most common mon in the top cut was Gholdengo, followed by the grass types, Masquerada and Amoonguss, King Gambit, Tauros, Pelipper. I would not expect Pelipper to be the 6th most common mon in this metagame. It is a very good Pokemon.
Tauros also pretty cool at number 5, right?
Tauros is pretty cool at number 5. Again, I think Tauros is legitimately maybe the 5th best Pokemon in the metagame, just because of how much it does. It is a Dondozo answer, or part of a Dondozo answer, in that it has Intimidate and Resist Wave Crash. If Dondozo continue to be Terra Flying, like Wolf and Amelia were, then maybe it's a little more difficult. But Chapa was not, for example, and then it's really good into his team. I think that it is just fighting coverage in general is really good. We saw a bunch of different fighting types do well. So I think Tauros has all of the tools necessary. Oh, and it's priority. So it deals with Murkrow teams pretty effectively too. And it really, really deals with Hydreigon specifically on Murkrow teams, which was a really common pick leading up to this tournament, and is still had a pretty high usage rate, all things considered, with 6 in top 32. So it does respond really, really well to that Pokemon, and as well as a lot of the physical attackers. Even King Gambit, which has Defiant, right? You don't want to normally switch in your Intimidate user on a Defiant Pokemon, but you just outspeed it and KO it. And some of them were even Mirror Herb and had the ability to, I can use a tool for this, and see how many were Mirror Herb.
I think it's 2.
It's 2. So you can see that you can even run Mirror and kind of counteract it that way. So I think that Tauros is not going anywhere. Whereas Pelipper, I wouldn't expect 7 of them to top cut Liverpool, for example.
Yeah, on the Toro stuff, Intimidate's just really good. I think people overstated how nerfed Intimidate was, with Clear Amulet, all the Defiant, but Intimidate's always going to be a really powerful ability.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Clear Amulet, I don't know if you can search this on the tool, but did anyone actually end up having Clear Amulet cut? Like Baxcalibur maybe using it?
More Mon-focused.
But yeah, I don't know. Like everyone was hyping up Clear Amulet and like Covert Cloak to some extent, but I feel like those items actually fell off quite a while ago, and they're really only good if you were just like, I definitely just cannot like lose attack, or I definitely cannot be faked out.
Okay, there was one Clear Amulet. It was on Golden Empoleon's Garchomp. That was the only Clear Amulet in Top Cut.
Oh, did you search it in the team list?
Team sheets.
I did just search it in the team sheets.
That makes sense.
That's nice. So if you want to know if an item is being used or not, I guess you can go to the team sheets.
That's true.
And this is something that I've talked about, I think in an earlier episode of this, or maybe just on stream, I forget when, that there is this really interesting dynamic where as Intimidate usage goes up, Clear Amulet usage should go up in kind, and that will make Intimidate worse, and maybe it'll go down. Tauros is enough of a Pokemon on its own, I think, that Clear Amulet is not going to... Like, Clear Amulet might increase, but Tauros's usage won't decrease because Clear Amulet increases, just because it has other things it does, right? Just because its coverage is really good. But I do think that we will see more Clear Amulet as a response to, maybe your matchup into Maluka's team with Baxcalibur Tauros becomes a lot easier if they can't switch in their Intimidate. Something like that would not shock me. Do we have any other metagame thoughts? How about Meowscarada and Amoonguss, both at tied for second place in usage? Does that surprise you at all?
The Amoonguss doesn't really surprise me. I think that when I saw the regional decks, I thought, okay, there's not enough sleep counterplay in this format, and Terra Grass to dodge Amoonguss is not the greatest answer of dealing with it. But I thought Amoonguss would be pretty high. Meowscarada, I'm surprised is as high as it was. I know it's just a really good mon. Flower Trick's an amazing move, but being the second most used mon does surprise me a bit, in cut at least.
What I'm curious about is like how many of those Meowscarada were Protean versus Overgrow, and what were the item splits on too?
Guess what? We have that data.
Yeah.
Because
okay. Like when I think about it, I think about like a Meowscarada is like a mon that really likes having Focus Sash. It's a good choice band user, but I personally don't feel like maybe it's best set. And then Life Orb's like available too, because like Angel said, Flower Trick is amazing, and boosting that damage is pretty good. But it does mean you have to play like more carefully with your Meowscarada. If you don't, then you kind of just lose the piece, and then that was like a whole mon that was one of your damage dealers.
So to answer your question, there were 3 Protean Meowscarada, 11 Overgrow, and all 3 of them were choice bands. All 3 choice bands were Protean, and every other there were 10 Focus Sash and 1 Life Orb. I believe the Life Orb was Amelia, right? Or was it someone else notable? It was Amelia, right?
It was Amelia. Yeah.
And so he was also on Overgrow, but everyone else was on Focus Sash, and the 3 choice band users. So that answers your question. I think Gavin in chat kind of has the maybe one of the best responses, which is that Goldango Meowscarada is one of the best cores to beat Amoonguss because they can't spore you, and they don't really care about redirection because, of course, you want to click Make It Rain. Meowscarada does take 1 million from Pollen Puff. It does die if it's not Focus Sash, or if it's Protean, right? So I guess only one of these Meowscaradas actually died to Pollen Puff. But I think that's a pretty good, reasonable response. I also think that it is part of a Dondozo answer, and it is also very, very good on Dondozo, and that kind of leads to it being very high usage. It forces Dondozo to Terra, and we saw on Maluka's team that you bring the Meowscarada and you say, I'm going to Flower Trick you to death unless you use your Terra, and then your Terra Dragon or Terra Flying, and then Baxcalibur beats you. And I think that was a really cool application of Flower Trick, and having it be part of your Dondozo matchup without having to rely on something like Haze.
Actually, bringing that up, the Dondozo only being 5 out of the 32 in cut is pretty big, even though 3 of them went pretty far. And the amount of the way people answered Dondozo, like you said, the Meowscarada with Max Caliber, we had Curse on Mimikyu. There's still some Murkrow. All the different ways people brought uh, Dondozo answers. I think that's a pretty interesting dynamic here, where people are trying to figure out, okay, how do we beat Public Enemy #1, which was, I believe, going to the tournament Dondozo.
I don't know if we have all of the I don't know if we can't search for a list of Dondozo answers, but I think every team you can't top cut a 500 person tournament without having a Dondozo matchup. I'm pretty sure everyone in top cut played at least one Dondozo, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to know your matchup and you have to have some responses. The reality is Dondozo has so many different movesets that it can run that you will always lose to a Dondozo pretty much, but you can try to reliably beat most of them. And so, for example, Emilio's Dondozo was maybe the most. I mean, it did 10 on Twist, right? It did really well. And that was the one that I played, and Emilio not only played me, but he also played Angel and beat both of us in Swiss. All right, so he beat you in Swiss, me in Top Cut. And that was the one that gave our team trouble, whereas Wolf's Dondozo and the other Dondozo I faced were not nearly as problematic for me. And similarly, Emilio's Dondozo team had the other weakness, which is that it lost to the Mirror. And Chapa's team, that got all the way to finals, I thought, was because it was Rest Chesto, always won the Mirror in a way that the other Dondozo players did not consistently do. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of... I feel like Dondozo... My take on Dondozo is it's an exercise in team building rather than exercise in playing. That's a whole other discussion, but it is really interesting to see how Dondozo teams are built and then what the counterplay is and how their counterplay interacts with your counterplay and all that sorts of things. But I'm not going to devolve the conversation much further and let you guys talk about Dondozo instead.
Oh, I don't want to. Sorry, I missed the beginning of the conversation, but I come back to Adi saying, "Yeah, go ahead and talk about Dondozo if you want to." I don't.
Fair.
Joke aside, though, I guess I'll say that Dondozo only made it to second place. It didn't win the thing, but obviously still something that you gotta really respect. However, like we were mentioning with the Murkrow discussion earlier, you don't need to have as hard cut counterplay to it as you might think. You can just kind of outplay it by taking advantage of the fact that it is a 2v1. It is still exploitable. You can do stuff like they're doing with their team, which is like just chilling water it down so that it doesn't have an attack stat, and you just kind of spore it, pollen puff it, stall it. It's there's like some cool creative ways that you just have to be able to willing to sit down and look for, instead of just wanting the one button answer. Just like I just need my safety net. You might have to think a little bit harder than you want. But that's Pokemon. You can't just expect to win every game by just clicking a single button.
Yeah, I guess looking at some of the top players and responses to Dondozo, because I am curious about that. Again, J-Sock, I think he had all the different Dondozos covered with different matchups. And that is one of the strengths of Open Team Sheet, is that you can know which responses to bring. We saw in the finals of the tournament that he did not bring Garganackle, which is a very common Dondozo response to Chapa because he didn't need it. He got to force the Terra Dragon with Meowscarada and then click Icicle Crash. Whereas if you are playing with Terra Steel Dondozo, then I assume he brings Garganackle instead and clicks Purifying Salt and KOs you that way. So I do think that you're allowed to have different Dondozo answers based on the Open Team Sheet, and that's not something that you necessarily get from Ladder, ignoring the fact that J-Sock primarily practiced on Ladder. That is... he might just be better.
Yeah.
I guess with Jody, he had a Haze Palafin as his answer, so he did still have the Haze, but he also had tools like Hurricane on Salamence, which just chunks it really hard. Amoonguss as well, again, redirects the attacks and lets your counterplay do his job, and also spores it if it's not safety goggles, if it's not Terra Grass. So he has that sort of counterplay to it. What is Aaron's counterplay to Dondozo? I did not see that nearly as well.
I guess. Well, it could be just my kind of counterplay, which my counterplay is basically I just hit it really hard, and then I
Just
hope it
hit
dies
it.
within like three.
The best
Yeah.
counterplay. Just hit it.
You have knock off the leftovers and just hit it.
Mhm.
You can close combat
With
it
helping
without
hand.
worry about it taking advantage of your defense drops. Tailwind to get maybe some of your slower Pokemon to outrun it and to get off their damage. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Hariyama, low-key, very good at powering through Dondozo. Probably doesn't 1v1 it, but you can't 1v1 it, really. It's 2 Pokemon. You have 2 Pokemon. You have to use your 2 Pokemon. But yeah, ignoring the close combat drops is very relevant for sure. And Vergrass, that's Trick Room 2, Masquerada, Crazy Thirst boosts. I can definitely see some combination of Hurricane, Close Combat, Flower Trick, getting eventually powering through most Dondozo. And that was probably his matchup.
To kind of reroute us off of this, Dondozo stuff, because it's Dondozo.
I think it's interesting. Go ahead.
As somebody who has not been listening to the podcast all day, and has not been paying attention, did we even really go through the top cut teams? I know that there's 32 of them, and we talked about Maluka's team at the top, but did we stop there? I feel like we stopped there.
Which team do you want to talk about?
Well, I don't know. It's just I just feel like normally when you're doing any kind of content, you talk more. You don't just go to number 1 and then just move on. I feel like have we even talked about the fact that Chapa was using Dondozo and his team that got the runner up.
There was a snow team in top 8.
There
there's
is
what
James Evans'
what team?
team.
Oh, Snow. Yeah,
It's not
I was
him.
I thought you meant the player. I was
No,
like,
the player.
what do you mean?
Yeah.
No. Angel's just correct because it's not Hale anymore. So let's how about this?
How about a couple different teams then?
Let's talk about Chapa's team, and then everybody else pick one team in the whole of top 32 that isn't your own team for the people that did make it, and I'll also pick not Jody's team because that is also my own team. And we'll talk about those, but let's first talk about Chapa's team. It sounds like Angel could talk about James Evans' team because if he wants, I won't pick for him. Anyway, Chapa's team was built by Mike, and there might be a team report on that one later.
There will be. Yep, on my channel, CK49.
Oh man, there's that guy. This thirsty content creator.
Gotta plug it. You can watch this podcast on CK49 as well on Wednesday. Just so you know, I don't think I mentioned that at the start of the stream. Go ahead.
I cannot relate to this guy. Oh my god. So yeah, this is honestly, I think the main thing that stands out on this team is it's got 3 of the best Pokemon to put on an offensive Dondozo team in Choice Band Masquerada, Life Orb Gholdengo, Palmot, really cool for giving yourself a second Dondozo, as well as being a good partner for the Soaks. And then the Arcanine, I think that one's you're gonna have to wait for the team report because I followed the team building process. I was in the chat that this was being built in, and I really don't know what it does, but it's there to reduce damage, I guess. The most notable thing is this Dondozo, this set. I don't think anybody that's running Dondozo is running a set quite like this. I guess we could go to the Top Cut Explorer thing and see if there's what kind of factor would we sort by, Adi? What would you sort by?
It's rest, and there is a second rest sleep talk Dondozo, I think.
Okay, but this one doesn't even have. This one doesn't have sleep talk.
Yes,
that's why it's notable.
There is a second rest Dondozo that one had sleep talk. This one does not, and I think that this
this one is Chestoberry. Look, this one was the deepest running Dozo. Did not even have leftovers, and everybody just kind of frame 1 puts leftovers on that. I think that this team does Dozo really well because. Think about all the cool stuff that you can do with this Resto Chesto Dozo. You can get down to low health. Some teams, the team that Adi is using, the team that Jody was using, they get through Dondozo and by chipping it down. You're not taking it on 1 hit, and a lot of people have come to accept that. But this one takes advantage of that and says well, if you're taking me down in 3. I'm going to rest up to full and get a clean reset, and then I'm just going to keep wailing on you with my boosts. And I really like that. I think that's really cool. And then it also has the Revival Blessing on the team. So if you do just let your Dondozo go down, don't even bother clicking rest once, and your Chestoberry goes uneaten, you come back in at half, you can spend a turn clicking rest to just go up to full. And now you just have another Dondozo. Yeah, you've taken 1 turn of damage or whatever, but this is just crazy. I think that this Dondozo set is very powerful and really shows that the Mon is. I mean, the Mon was never that linear, but like it's even less linear than maybe people thought. There are some interesting things that you can do with it.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think Palmot was a Pokemon that didn't see a ton of play outside of Dondozo. I think there were 2 in Top Cut that weren't on Dondozo. But not only does Palmot enable Dondozo to come back, it also enables Tatsugiri to come back, and that is really powerful because one of the issues with Dondozo as it's currently constructed, where you lead Tatsugiri plus a threat, and you're always threatening to switch out your Masquerada or whatever into Dondozo, but you're also threatening a ton of damage, is that the Tatsugiri is vulnerable. And if you call the turn wrong and you lose the Tatsugiri, you probably just lose the game. But because you have Arrival Blessing, this means that you can play so much more aggressively with your Tatsugiri, and allows you to it opens up the entire playbook now. And I think that's another really, really powerful application of Palmot on Dondozo teams. There was a second Palmot on Dondozo teams. I forget whose it was in Top Cut.
It was Zach's.
It was Zach. Oh, and Zach was running basically the same team. Yes. Okay.
Almost.
So there were 2 Palmots, and there were 2 Palmots on other teams too. But I definitely think this is the strongest application of Revival Blessing because you either get 2 Dondozos or you get 2 Tatsugiris, or maybe you just take 2 Masqueradas because that's also a Pokemon that gets to, just power through teams, and sometimes it's hard to deal with the second one. So that's the other cool thing that I really like about Mike and Chapa's team. Oh, and one more thing, is that this Dondozo wins the mirror. And I remember everyone, when Top Eight was happening, was like, oh, it's Emilio versus Chapa. Emilio's going to win because Emilio is just this crazy skillful player, right? And he is. Not to say Chapa's bad by any means, he got to the finals of the regional, but Chapa had a huge matchup advantage because he can just rest his Dondozo. And Dondozos are not OHKOing Dondozos. And so if it ever got to a game state where it was Dondozo versus Dondozo, Chapa was winning. And I think that is really cool about this Dondozo, is that it has a game plan for the mirror when I think a lot of the other Dondozos really didn't.
So, if there's nothing else to say about those teams, do you guys have other teams that you in mind that you want to cover? If somebody wants to, I guess we could quickly. I'll give you guys a bit more time, and we can talk about the one that was mentioned in the chat. Yep. Was Alberto's. Somebody asked about Alberto's. They didn't specify, and so I'm gonna top player.
I assume Alberto Lara is what.
But there is in fact 2 Albertos. So be more specific. Do not disrespect. The fact that there are
Alberto Renero. You were also on stream at one point, correct? Were they both on stream?
I believe Alberto Renero's hanging out in the chat here too, right? So
yeah. He's been around. So spoilers. We have a team report with Alberto Renero on the channel, so you get to hear all about his team as well at some point. But yeah, Alberto Lara's team is I think a little more unique. It's a little less standardy Murkrow Goldango stuff. So you might want to see. I think they were talking about Alberto Lara's team.
All right, yeah, let's open up that one. Talk about it really quick. So this one is, I think the most notable thing is that it's Grimmsnarl. It's screens, an archetype that we maybe briefly mentioned in the preview and said, yeah, no, you can sleep on this archetype. This one is not doing too hot lately. And Alberto said, I'm just going to bulk up my Pokemon and skill diff you with a bunch of Pokemon that have really good stat distributions. Corviknight, Skeledirge, both really hard to take down with healing moves. Garchomp, slightly different than the normal with the Choice Scarf, Life Orb Hydreigon, Weakness Policy Goldango. Weakness Policy Goldango is an interesting one to me just because of how policy works in Open Team Sheet. They see that right away. They're never going to waste a turn clicking into it accidentally. If they're ever activating the policy, it's on purpose, but that could be a cool deterrent. It could maybe prevent people from, say, clicking a Heat Wave to 2-hit KO your Goldango because they now have to worry about it getting a boost when it gets hit. And that's, I think, a noteworthy use of weakness policy in Open Team Sheet.
So there's a couple interesting things on this top 32. One of the interesting things I found is there's 2 Glamora here, both brought by Gaz. Emilio and James both brought Glamora on different types of teams. I think that's an interesting way they try to beat Dozo, especially for Emilio trying to do it in the mirror that didn't have rest. That Toxic Spikes was an interesting tech to have on a team. you just whittle, Dondozo down, or I guess stuff like Garganackle, which the Terra Poison comes in handy for.
True.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that Glimmora was a Pokemon that started to see a little more play on ladder, specifically on Dondozo teams, in the week leading up to regionals. I guess in hindsight, that was probably largely Emilio. I think there were definitely multiple people using it. I didn't ladder at all. I was just told this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is cool to see James do so well with Glimmora on a much less standard take. And in fact, this looks almost like a James's team, I guess, is I'll talk about that because I have not looked at this at all, but it is a very cool team. We've seen James Beck's team, just to clarify.
I was ready to click on James Evans' team. Okay.
Now, someone else can cover James Evans, I guess. His team is very cool, too. James Beck lost to, I think, Wolf in top 32, but had a really, really interesting take on what looks like a very traditional Murkrow, Goldengo, Hydreigon team. Except that instead of having a Murkrow on it, you have a Talonflame on it. And so you get to still click those buttons. He is presumably a lot bulkier with his Goldengo, where he has Nasty Plot leftovers. And that was a set that popped off this regional. I will point out that, yes, Angel and I also ran Nasty Plot leftovers, but leftovers was, in fact, the most common item on Goldengo, which is really interesting, but it does get to sit on the field for a long time. It has Protect, it has Nasty Plot, it's hard to take KO on. And so, so he was running this sort of leftovers Nasty Plot set, which is a much slower paced thing. He was running Life Orb Talonflame, so it has a little more utility than Murkrow while it's on the field. And then he had the Paldean Tauros as well as the damage dealer, and the Glimmora as the damage dealer. And this was the same as Emilio's Glimmora, where it was Choice Specs Glimmora. And so it really, really threw out a ton of damage, but also had a ton of stats and was paired with enough ground resist that it wasn't, and also it was Terra Grass, but enough ground resist that it wasn't super weak to something like a Garchomp. So I think this team is really cool.
All right, let's talk about one or two more teams before we move on to the last topic of the day. Because, we could probably talk about this all week, but
for sure.
There's like a lot. There's just so much to take in after a major this big and this large. So, and I'm sure Adi's going to be crunching all the numbers. So let's talk about James Evans' team. That was one that we were mentioning and should just be talked about, because it's snow. This was a Mirror Herb Paldean Water Tauros. As we talked about earlier, you can switch in on the Defiant Pokemon, and while you are giving them a boost, you're also getting an even bigger boost yourself, and that could be pretty cool. Titan, of course, the actual Hail abuser here, with the Slush Rush, Assault Vested, and got just double Ice move, Water, and Fighting coverage. Obviously, very fast. Terra Water to maybe help it out defensively and also get extra damage on the liquidation. Scarf Hydreigon, also somewhat abnormal. We've seen it, I guess, with Alberto's team, sometimes just slapping a Scarf on a Pokemon. Scarf's just a lot more viable. I mean, I'm going to go back to, shitting on Dynamax, but Scarf is just so much more viable just on Pokemon when you need offense fast and you don't have to be... It's not a Pokemon you're going to be Dynamaxing every game and turning off its item and, clicking Airstream to get your speed. You can just have speed right away, and that's really cool. So that's fun. And then Gothitelle. I think, was this the only Gothitelle in the cut?
There were 2 Gothitelle in the cut.
Okay.
I think.
Let's see.
Yeah, because Geo had it.
Oh, yeah, Geo's team. Okay. And so, this is a solid Gothitelle. Terra Dark with the Foul Play, I think that's cool. Specs, Rotom Heat, that's also pretty interesting. Volt Switch and Trick, kind of cool options on a Shadow Tag team, both with trapping in Pokemon and pivoting for real damage. And then Trick could also be really cool if you were able to lock down an Amoonguss into, say, Rage Powder. I guess that doesn't work for Trick, but lock it into something useful, as you locking in some support Pokemon into a useless move and then keeping it trapped in on the field can basically turn the game into a 2v1. So, lots of cool stuff on this team. Just looks like a really well-rounded team. It's got Fire, Water, Grass. It's almost got Fantasy Core, I guess. It doesn't have the... Wait, does it even not... It does. Maybe it doesn't almost have Fantasy Core. Maybe I'm just lying.
It just has a dragon.
That's hasn't seen too much Goldengo.
Okay, you know what? It's got the... It's got, the Snow Core. Whatever.
It's got the Fire Water Grass. It's got that going for it.
Yeah.
I think the coolest thing, again, I'm Dondozo pilled. I always want to know how to beat Dondozo, and I've tried everything. And Gothitelle is one of my favorite ways. We saw this on Nils' team from the Victory Road Tournament several weeks ago. He got second place at that. Gothitelle, meaning that they can't lead like Tatsugiri, Masquerada, and just switch into Dondozo is so cool because now they are forced to like actually play Pokemon. If they don't lead Dondozo, they may just not have access to it. I love that. I think it's one of the coolest pieces of Dondozo counterplay because it forces them to rethink all of their lines in a way that no other Pokemon does. So big fan of Gothitelle. It's hard to fit on a team because it is like it just does very specific things, but I love that James did so well with it.
All right, let's get one more team in. John, do you have a pick? Was there a team that you wanted to
I gotta
pick
pick. I gotta pick the one with my boy on it, the Sableye team by Ryan Haig.
Okay, yeah.
And I know. I think I was talking with Z a little bit after the event. I think they had a hand in like working with Ryan here. They're both like really good friends, acquaintances. This is like, a different take on screen support. So this is like the other prankster with screens, but it's more active in disruption with like Encore Disable, whereas Grimmsnarl was just like T-waving stuff, whatever else it does. But yeah, I think Sableye is something that I might be considering. It does have like a couple of better traits than Grimmsnarl. Not being weak to Make It Rain is a really big one, which I think these 4 moves do make it like more valuable to stay on field. But if you lose it, it's okay. You can just bring in your like big setup mon, which this team has 2. You got Volcarona and Goldengo, and there are like obviously on this team comp the ones you want to build up. It's like lefties Volk with Citrus Goldengo. So either way, they're still going for the bulky setup. Then I run you over, bulky offense strategy. We do have another Tauros Water, like more standard goggles set, but it's still doing the same thing. And I mean, there's a Dragonite there. It's like a typical Choice Band Dragonite, but punch them a bit, and then you can clean up with your Goldengo or your Volcarona. That's definitely pretty cool to see here too. And yeah, it is like turning me back towards Sableye a little bit because I had lost faith. It was kind of like a Murkrow deal where it's like it's just not doing enough. But maybe I'm wrong, and I need to.
I think the Encore Disable set is really cool just because while you are attackless, you effectively can disrupt so many things that it doesn't matter. And also, if you do get off the Encore Disable and they stay in, they're forced to struggle and they're damaging themselves. That way.
It is like a really. I think that is just like straight up a Dondozo check right there. If they protect at any point in their like staying in, Encore just shuts it down for the rest of the game, and you can even just like try to win on time at that point if you have the damage or the Pokemon lead. But you can also just like disable them and force them to KO themselves really easily. So, yeah, strong moveset there.
Yeah, the pressure of it is just really good. I lost to Ryan in Swiss, and Sableye Volcarona is really hard to break for our team, and having like the screens with Encore Disable pressure is just really, really strong.
What I will say is that, so funnily enough, Angel and I played this exact same team, the same round, which from people, of course, and they played it very differently because I played River Davis, who was using the team, and they led their Sableye into my Goldengo, and we talked about, Sableye is better than Grimmsnarl. I think Sableye is better than Grimmsnarl, period, because it isn't weak to Goldengo, but this set leaves it weak to Goldengo because they just are not pressured at all. And so, literally, game 1 against River, I got to +6 with my Goldengo because he was stuck with a Sableye on field that was doing nothing. And he couldn't switch in because at any point I could click Make It Rain and take 2 KOs. And so, that is one downside of the Sableye. The other thing is that Tauros is like a top 5 usage Pokemon at this regional, at least in top cut. And that is one of the downsides of screens, is that Raging Bull just breaks them and is so common. Of course, Grimmsnarl has the utility of being able to Spirit Break it and do a lot of damage. Sableye gets to Will-O-Wisp it. And I think that's really what its strength is against Tauros. But by not running that move, it doesn't have that ability. And that is fine into specifically our team because we were choice Tauros and you can just let it take an attack and then disable it and it doesn't do anything. But against a lot of the other Tauros in the field, if you let it click Raging Bull and break your screens, you've kind of wasted your turns, and so it is sort of unbringable into It's not very good into Goldengo, at least the nasty block Goldengos, which are very common, and it's not very good into Tauros by and large, other than some specific sets. And so I am a little skeptical of screens still. I think screens are not very good this format, but it is cool to see screens Sableye, because I do think that is the best screen setter, and I do think that Encore Disable is a very cool Dondozo answer as well. Oh, and Maluka apparently didn't run Raging Bull. He ran Wave Crash, so he just did not respect screens at all, or he didn't care about them.
Nice. Do some real damage with
Damage
that.
is
ball, I
Damage,
respect.
baby.
Yep.
We just crit through the screens every time. It doesn't matter.
One question that we missed was from Nails asking, what do y'all think of only 3 Garchomps showing up in cut? Garchomp was a Pokemon pretty early on that everybody was like, this guy is going to run the meta. This guy is going to be everywhere. Garchomp being, strong ground types are pretty notable for running the metagame in a lot of the past formats, I guess. And so, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Honestly, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I'm going to throw it to somebody else.
I think it comes down to the early discussion with Pelipper, where a lot of people figured out Goldengo is the way, and then they just needed ways to support Goldengo, and then Pelipper came out as one of the best options since it's so good at shutting down Garchomp from harming your Goldengo. Not many Garchomp are running the single target ground move, which I think if we look back at Alberto Lara's team, he is running Stomping Tantrum, which is maybe why he is one of the Garchomps in cut as opposed to other Garchomps who are just running your typical Earthquake, Dragon Claw, Slash Protect. Maybe it's one of the reasons, but I do think Garchomp had that issue of it's commonly paired with Murkrow as well, and it wasn't being innovated enough. So people developed answers, and then the people who were on the Garchomp Murkrow offense train didn't have enough response to their response. That's why I think it didn't really succeed. I
just
can't
think
say I
it's
had
not
any real trouble with Garchomp in the tour at all either. So
I just think it's not the best Earthquake user. Dondozo is the best Earthquake user in the format.
fact,
That's so funny.
actual fact.
It's true. It's just so funny.
But this is the best ground type.
It is, notably, like you said, it wasn't really being innovated upon, and with the exception of Alberto Ronero's, funnily enough, both Albertos used Garchomp. Alberto Ronero used a pretty standard set. Alberto Lara, like you said, was Scarf, with so he had a single target move available to him, which meant that he was a little less susceptible to stuff like Pelipper clicking Wide Guard, which of course was very common this regional. But on top of that, the other one was Brady, who also innovated by running Earthquake, Dragon Claw, Terra Blast, Protect, Terra Fire Garchomp. And so he also had his single target move that people maybe weren't expecting, gave it a way to hit grass types more effectively, didn't even opt for Rock Slide. And so it does look like the way that Garchomp was positioned traditional Garchomps were positioned into the metagame was pretty poor, and the people who did well with it were the people who were willing to really innovate on the way Garchomp was built and find new ways to make use of it.
So let's go ahead and transition into the last subject on the list here, which is Series 2.
Series 2.
That was announced. I don't know if you're hyped or not. I guess I'll go around and ask everybody after I finish just describing what happened. But I think it was last week they mentioned that Series 2 will start February 1st, go to April 1st, I believe. So full month of February and March. And it is going to allow the Paradox Pokemon. So notably enough, this means that it will not include the Ruin Pokemon. Back when we were playing the assumed meta Series 0, we were practicing with Ruin Pokemon, with Paradox Pokemon. Well, Paradox are back, Ruin or not. No Chien-Pao, no Chi-Yu, no Wo-Chen or Ting-Lu. But the Paradox Pokemon are going to be allowed. And, I mean, they are very notable players. They are... they all got 570 base stat across the board. Going to be incredibly strong. This also means... I guess we had just found out, I think literally today, right? That Orlando is going to be in the Series 2 format. And because of the way that the rules are worded in the document, it says that the the format on Battle Stadium, or like the format of the tournament, is going to match the format on Battle Stadium. So this means that Australia, OCIC, is also assumed to be Series 2. And yeah, like as I just said, Orlando, Florida confirmed today that Series 2 is the format that they'll be hosting there. That one's like February 3rd.
Mhm.
So like 3 days into the format. Love that because we
Love
will
that.
have the ladder for 2 days in game before you can start practicing it. Also, as a just totally random side note that we forgot to mention earlier, Liverpool is coming up next weekend, not this coming weekend. So we'll talk about that more next time. But yeah, Series 2 announced. Series 1 gonna be dying. Let's throw it over to Angel. What are your thoughts?
So I'm sad because this format is actually really fun. I enjoy this
Mhm.
format a lot, and we're only gonna play one tournament. So I played my 10 rounds, and then my 2 rounds of cut, and now I'm done with the format. Those are my only games of this format. So it's kind of depressing.
It's
But
okay to tear.
Series
Like it's
2
okay
looks
to cry,
fine.
Angel. Like I'm gonna like I'm starting to tear up just thinking about this right now.
Yeah, well, I don't think I mind the next series, as I do enjoy the Paradox runs. I think
Yeah.
this can be fun, so I'm not too upset about it. But this dynamic of shifting formats every 2 months is kind of crazy. I don't think I like having the format change that drastically. Like, are we gonna have GS Cup by Worlds? If we do that, I'm gonna be
Shut
really
up.
upset.
Shut up.
So,
So for Sword and Shield, we had something similar, right? Where we had 2 month formats where they introduced new Gmax Pokemon. But the introduction of Gmax Pokemon was a significantly smaller metagame impact, and the one that was a huge metagame impact was Series 3, where they introduced all the Pokemon Home Pokemon, stuff like Venusaur, stuff like Incineroar, and they stuff like Clefairy, I think was the other big one.
yeah,
And so we didn't have that like huge shift in the metagame. We only had one huge shift in the metagame. This time we are having 3, maybe 4 huge shifts in the metagame in for each series, and that's going to be very different. I do dislike the fact that there is no metagame, or there will be metagame development, but like I don't have to care about it. Basically, right? I'm playing the first regional of the
yeah,
format, and then that's it. And then the people who are going to Liverpool will have to care about what we did, and that is a really weird dynamic. It might be a little different for Series 2, where there are 2 regionals in North America. I believe there's this, and then there's Orlando, and there's Knoxville. So people will have to care a little bit about the results of the first regional, but it does feel very different knowing that you are building for one tournament and you are not like building across a format. And I do prefer. I think a 4 month format would be really ideal, in
yeah.
my opinion.
4 months is like a really good
Yeah.
sweet spot. Like, having to drastically change a format every 2 months is way too much and way too fast. We're only getting like one tournament a region. I mean, one tournament a month. So it's like you don't get to digest the format. There's not much you can do here. So I don't like that they're doing that. I hope they slow down. Hopefully, the next series is just gonna be the copy of what we have here, but it's probably just gonna add the ruined Pokemon and drastically change the meta again. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
John ZU, thank you for the raid. Congrats on your top cut at San Diego Regionals, I believe. So yeah, we're just talking about San Diego right now. Welcome to all 19 of you who are just joining.
And we're talking about Series 2 now, the
And
announcement.
we are talking about Series 2. We have moved on a little bit from San Diego's top cut. But yeah, so John, who did you have any thoughts about the Series 2 announcement?
Yeah. I'm really sad to see Series 1 go. I really think that just like everyone here is pretty much saying the same thing. But this is like a metagame that I have felt like it's a return to form. And I really would like to like develop more. I guess we'll see if they try to like rotate it back. I was like, that's like a Hopium take. They bring it back at some point. But I will say that like just introducing Paradox and not just like dumping the ruins and the Paradox at the same time is better. Paradox are definitely going to shift things, but maybe the impact won't be like that large. I am excited to welcome our Fluttermane and Iron Bundle Overlords, which we'll get to in a sec. Generally, I'm just like mostly like I just wish that there was a way for both these formats to exist, if you know what I'm saying, and like because I know this is probably not even like a very good parallel, but I know TCG has like expanded or limited. I think do you always just do limited now or whatever is standard right now?
And we only have standard events now. We
Yeah,
used to have expanded, but the expanded is basically canceled for now.
yeah. So like TCG gets to do that, but for us, it's we just stick with our one format, and we're kind of at the whims of whatever they decide. And it's not even really what TPCI decides. It's really just like whoever is programming Battle Stadium decide that. I think is probably like Game Freak or TPC. Maybe they communicate with TPCI. I don't really know. I feel like they don't. Like I feel like TPC makes decisions, and then they're just like, "Here's what we're doing."
Right.
Have fun, TPCI.
You would think that the organizers of the regionals would know what the format the regional would be in, and if they don't, then that seems like an issue. Definitely need better communication, and I imagine TPCI would communicate that with the regional tournament organizers. But if they were in the know, they probably are in the know. I don't know exactly how all these politics work, but it does seem like there's a lack of communication, and the players are the ones who suffer because we are going into a regional and we don't know what to expect. This is not the only time this has happened. I think back to like Charlotte 2018, where they stealth dropped Incineroar onto us with Intimidate like 2 weeks before the regional, and we had to like suddenly change everything because that was so format defining. So it's not this at least this way we get a full like 3 weeks to prepare for Orlando, knowing what the format is going to be instead of finding out like a week in advance, which would be really problematic. But it does kind of reduce the hype and mean that now suddenly I have a lot less incentive to play. I wanted to stream a lot with the team that I just got a regional with, and now maybe that may or may not happen because who wants to watch Series 1,
Europeans.
Yeah, the Europeans do.
Yeah.
That's true.
We got your back.
I got to stream at European-friendly times if people want to watch me play with the movies Goldengo some more.
Yep.
Time to leave work like 3 hours early.
Gotta just wake up really early. I'll start streaming at 5 a.m. But yeah, I guess, so of course, the actual Series 2 rule set introduces the Paradox Pokemon. So there are 14 Paradox Pokemon that are introduced, with the exception of Gallade, Neo Gallade, and Neo Salamence. I forget all the names. They all have a 570 BST and the ability Quark Drive or Photosynthesis, which boost once their highest stat in either Sun or Electric terrain, respectively. So, maybe a little more Torkoal, maybe a little more Pincurchin. Probably not that one, but you never know. And then they also have an item that can trigger their boost called Booster Energy. So if you weren't playing before Series 1 with the speculative rule sets, that is basically the rundown. And we will be going over all these Pokemon at a later date on a later stream. We just still have a little bit of time before we actually have to worry about how these Pokemon play. We don't actually have that much time because we got to start prepping for Orlando. I think all 4 of us are going, potentially. I'm not sure if Alex is going.
I'm deciding like tomorrow.
Okay.
Same.
So you will have to start figuring it out real soon. But is there one Paradox Pokemon in particular that you guys are excited for? Angel, you want to go first?
So I like Fluttermane the best, but I think competitively, I really, really like Great Tusk. Great Tusk is really cool mon. Headlong Rush is a really good move.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's just ground plus combat. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
Not many Pokemon get it.
Ground combat, baby.
It's just Hariyama is the only other Pokemon that I know of that gets it.
Yeah, I always think when I look at a format, what ground moves we have, and if we have a good single target ground move, I want to see what that mon can do. So we had like Landorus I, or sometimes even Landorus T with Earth Power, and you have a 120 base power single target ground move in the format right now, and I think that's just really strong.
Yep. That might force Goldengos to opt for the more defensive Terra. Flying would kind of own the Pokemon, but then you're not running that Terra Steel, which is just so juicy.
It feels so good.
At some point, the mon is taking compromises, either dying or having a bad Terra. So, very notable. I love Great Tusk's design. That mon is so awesome.
Okay.
On the flip side, if the Goldengo gets an attack, I think it does just shot the Great Tusk. This one doesn't.
You probably run a Sylveus on this thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. if they get +2 and they go Terra Flying, I don't know if you can live that.
Oh, I Terra
Isn't
Steel,
Great
John. Whatever, man.
Okay.
You Terra, I
Isn't
Terra.
Great
Whatever,
Tusk
man.
faster?
Okay. Huh?
I'm gonna Terra Ice then. How's that?
Oh, wait a minute.
What's their
Well,
base
then I
speed?
Terra
Yeah.
Fired. That resists Steel and hits your Ice type.
I just like Stone Edge.
True. All right. So the one that well, I guess let's throw it to John first. John, you got one you want to pick?
Man, I got so many.
Right, they're also cool.
They're also cool. I think the one I'm currently on the train the most is probably Iron Moth, which I am only looking at it as like, this is maybe just like a knee jerk, but I think Goldingo will still be good. The mon is like, it's still absurd. So
Yeah.
I think Iron Moth though is probably one of the best positioned new mons coming in to handle it, since it's pure fire, a really great special spread, and
Wait,
I
what?
think it's got like, it doesn't
said
have like
pure
a perfect.
fire?
No,
It's not pure
it's got fire. No, I said it's got
Oh.
fire.
Oh, okay.
Did I say pure fire? Sorry. Anyway, I think it's positioned well because I think it has a lot of the moves that do a lot of damage, spread damage, and being fire type and being able to use booster energy and still be plus speed nature is like a lot of good combinations of things. So, it's got a lot of great moves: Heat Wave, Fire Dance, Overheat. It's basically just full Corona, but not a bug type, which, in my opinion, is a good thing. But you don't have Quiver Dance, which I guess is a bad thing. But at the same time, do you really care if you're base 140 special attack and you just can click the move with booster energy? I think that's pretty useful. Good speed tier, good special bulk.
Yeah,
I just like that mon.
He's got awesome stats.
It's got crazy stats. Alex, you're up. What's your favorite?
All right. Right now, the one that I'm gonna pick is just like all of them. Like John said, there's just so many good Pokemon, but I'm gonna go with Iron Hands. Iron Hands is just the new my new stat stick. Like we were, a lot of us were using King Gambit at San Diego. The Pokemon, especially with like an Assault Vest. Actually, did you guys run Assault Vest? You did, right?
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Yeah, with Assault Vest, the mon just has so many stats, and this mon is just so fat. It has some cool options available to it. It's got Fake Out. Both of its stabs are solid. I mean, it's kind of forced to run Wild Charge, which isn't amazing, but it's got a big HP that it doesn't really care about the recoil. And then it also gets access to, like, if you're running that Assault Vest set, you can run like Volt Switch to, have a pivot move on your Fake Out Pokemon. It can run a number of other options too if you want to like have a bit of coverage. I don't think it has amazing coverage, but I'm just gonna repeat what I said at the beginning. The mod is so fat; it can take hits so well. This guy's crazy.
Yeah, it is just a crazy big stat stick, and that is so powerful. You guys have taken two of mine. I wanted to say Great Tusk, partially because I'm a big believer in Earthworm, and it is a fantastic partner for Earthworm. Iron Hands, I've always wanted a fighting electric type with Fake Out on my team, and now I don't have to run Palmot anymore. I think that my personal favorite is Roaring Moon. Specifically, I really like the fact that it has Tailwind, and it can run like Booster Energy, and so it can increase its speed. You do have to play with the stats a little bit. I think you have to run Jolly, and you have to not be max attack or something. But you do get to do some fun stuff with its stats to make it so it's speed boosting, and then it has a really, really fast Tailwind. You can also do this with Iron Jugulus as well. And so it is speed control, but it's the first time we haven't had a speed control Pokemon that's a real Pokemon this format, right? Like we were using Talonflame, doesn't really do damage. Murkrow doesn't really do damage. Pelipper, we made it do damage. We put a Life Orb on it so it would do damage, but like it's not the same as a fast Tailwind that also just hits like a truck. And so now that we have two Pokemon that do that, the speed control game is going to change completely. The way that Hyper Offense plays is going to be very different. Maybe we even see stuff like Murkrow and Talonflame come back into the format because suddenly having Prankster Tailwind that goes before stuff like Roaring Moon is going to be more valuable. But yeah, this is the one that I'm most excited for. Dragon Dark is sick coverage. It's acrobatics and Terra Flying. If you wanted to, it's got this base 139 attack stat, which is just absolutely insane. It just does so much. So this is my personal favorite of the other than Iron Tusk or Great Tusk that you already took. Great Tusk. This is my personal favorite of the Paradox Pokemon that are coming to Series 2 in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I cannot believe this. The series have got to go.
They really did it to us.
I mean, like, if I played Series 1 for, like, 3 or 4, like, 5, 6, maybe a full year, maybe 2, that would have been all right. But they just give us basically a month of it. I can't believe it.
I think it'd be
so
okay
sad.
with 1 year.
I don't think I want to play it for that long. I think that it's a fun
that was just for the bit. But I just wish we had more time with it.
I do
more than one tournament.
Yes, more than one tournament. I do think the format, like every format, needs development, and especially early on. Like I said this for Dynamax too. Like it took us a little bit to understand Dynamax counterplay. I think it's going to take us even longer to understand Terra and Terra counterplay and how to optimally incorporate it into your team. Are you better off using defensive or offensive Terras? Maybe is there a ratio to them? Do you want to try to build your team to Terra 1 Pokemon consistently, or do kind of spread them out a little more? Like all these different questions that we don't really fully understand. And then on top of that, not just team building, playing as well. Like I think that 3 years from now, when we are entering Generation 10, and we look back at Series 1, we will be like laughing at ourselves for using the teams that we did, because we will understand how to use these Pokemon in a totally different way. That's going to take a while for us to figure out. And so giving us only 1 month, just everything is super unrefined. And I wish that we had more time, not only to like learn how to use these Pokemon, but also learn how to use Terra in a format where we don't have to constantly just like keep building new teams and worry about a new format. We get to learn the mechanic itself.
So, I think at this point, we should probably start wrapping things up just to respect the time of our guests, John and Angel. I just feel bad for keeping you guys prisoner here for this whole time. Audie just won't shut up, man. It's not me. It's him.
I love talking. What can I say?
No, I'm just teasing. But yeah, we'll talk more about Series 2 later. I mean, it's not even the current format yet, so there's still going to be so much to say about it. We got time. Next week we'll be talking about Liverpool. If you guys have any questions, now would be the time. We've already gotten we've got 2 questions that I want us to talk about before we get out of here. And one of these was mentioned a lot earlier, but no, Justin, you didn't waste your bits. We're going to talk about that question. Yeah, another question is from the one question from Justin there, and then another question from Polar Bear earlier. So we'll actually go with the Justin one because it's more on topic to what we were just talking about, and then we'll come back to the Polar Bear one. Justin asks, would you pick rotating formats or just everything in the decks, including Paradox and Ruins, all year? So kind of like that Series 0 format that we were playing at the beginning, or what we have now. I would still take what we have now, just because I really enjoyed Series 1. I don't want to play with the Ruin Pokemon. The Ruin Pokemon scare me. Qianpao, Chi-Yu are just like, Ting-Lu and Wo-Chen are fine. Those are like, the defensive options. I don't mind defensive options, but just to have the opportunity to just like play without those guys before they come in and ruin my life, I really like that.
So on the opposite side. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
All right, we'll throw it to John.
Okay. Personally, I would have preferred just like one single form. I agree that it would have been a pain to deal with Qianpao and Chi-Yu all year, but also I love those little dudes. So I would have been totally on top of it. So,
oh man,
yeah, I would have been cool with like just throw everything at once and just like develop that whole thing over the year. I guess I'm like a little biased because those are the formats I typically did the best in. Like I've kind of been, I guess, being washed up is something that I'm quite known for doing nowadays. But yeah, generally speaking, I typically like to play one team 1 year and just make iterations on the same team.
Well, we accept all takes here in the tub, John, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Angel, go ahead.
So generally, I prefer to have a rotating format. Like, not even specific to this generation. I prefer to have, I did enjoy with 2019 how we had different series. And I think the big thing is just having them spread out. So I don't like the every 2 months. That's too soon. But every 4 months or so, having a slightly different format is a good thing. And I'd much prefer that than having a year-long format. I think that it just keeps everything fresh.
I
Adi,
think
what about you?
I think that I mostly like. Okay, first off, I definitely would rather have year-long formats. I think that the like ideal length is something similar to like what we had in 2019, where Sun and Moon were kind of the same format, and they kind of developed to completion, and then they switched, and we had Ultra Series, and that kind of developed to completion. But if we had to play 3 more months of Sun and Moon Series or 3 more months of Ultra Series, I'd be sick of it. It just like ended right at the right time, I think. And so yeah, like about 4 to 6 months of a format is pretty ideal. Don't really want to go too much more than that. That being said, to answer Justin's question, I think that I would rather have no Rune Pokemon, no Paradox Pokemon, specifically because the Rune Pokemon are so unbelievably powerful. They are going to be on every team for the foreseeable future, for the rest of VGC history, unless their abilities get nerfed, right? They are the equivalent of the Tapus of this generation, and just like how you're going to see Tapu Koko and Tapu Fini on every single metagame forever, as long as they're legal, you are going to be seeing Chen Pao and the moth guy, the goldfish guy. I forget his name. Chi-Yu. Yes, thank you.
Chi-Yu.
We're going to be seeing Chen Pao and Chi-Yu on every hyper offense team for the rest of time, and where I really think we should enjoy the 2, 3, 4 month period where we don't have to see those Pokemon at all, because it's going to be a long time before we get that sort of respite again.
I, for one, like watching them due to a
Yeah,
little fish.
of course.
Yeah, you sure do.
Okay, so we're gonna go to this other one, and then actually let's answer this one that was quick from J-Ben, who says, "Why wasn't Trick Room common?" I would say that Trick Room's just kind of hard to build. There are 2 things that Trick Room have to answer right now, and that is Amoonguss and Dondozo, and it can be kind of hard, especially for a Trick Room team to sweep in the 4 turns when the opponent has those 2 tools at their disposal, or just the fact that defensive Terras can happen at any time, and the KO that you expected to pick up didn't happen because of Terra, because of the Terra. And so yeah, I don't know, that's like the best like quick summary I can give on why Trick Room isn't good, or why it didn't do well. But I don't think I would discount it entirely. Like, they had Trick Room on their team, Adi and Angel. Like, it's still a good move, still a great option, and we still saw it do well in the event overall. Like, it didn't Fari Giraffe get top 4.
Yeah, I think Trick Room did as well as it normally would. I feel like it didn't underperform or anything like that.
Exactly.
I think Trick Room was well situated. There's different ways you can use Trick Room like we did. We just had a Trick Room Pokemon, like a mode for it. And there's ways you can build it with just, dedicated to it. And I think a good amount of teams for each side made it through the tournament. So I think Trick Room's just fine.
Yeah, doing fine.
We saw Grant
All right.
run a hard Trick Room team as well, and lose to Jody in top 32. But that team also was just like very committed to hard Trick Room, and it did top cut the regional.
So I guess this could be the last question, unless nobody else comes in with one. And this is from Polar Bear. Says, off-topic inquiry. So you guys should save this question for later, and I did. What are your opinions on San Diego as a host city for regionals in comparison to other event locations? I personally found it as one of my favorites, if not my favorite. So yeah, Adi, what do you think about San Diego?
I had a great time in San Diego, and I just want to say, like, in general, like, a lot of times when you go to a regional, you don't really get to, like, explore the city very much. It is really, really nice when the regional is actually in the city, because it allows you to do stuff in the city. And stuff like San Diego regionals, right downtown, there's food options around there. The zoo was just like a short tram ride away. It was great. Same with Vancouver, which is right downtown, stuff like that. Compare that to some of the regionals we've been to in, say, like rural Virginia or in Oaks, Pennsylvania, which is like a 45-minute drive from Philadelphia. And so it's not like it's Philly regionals, but it's not really Philly regionals. Stuff like Collinsville, which is not really in St. Louis. There's just like so many regionals like that. Fort Wayne, Indiana, right? Like, those are not places that you really want to visit. And even if they are near a city, you can't really explore those cities. So I really loved the San Diego regionals, both as a place to go. It's a great place to visit. It's the venue itself was just fantastically located. The same is going to be true of Orlando, and it's part of why I'm so excited for Orlando regionals. Those are the things I look for in a regional, and now I think now I'm probably going to be a little more picky about the regionals I go to, having experienced these sort of things, knowing that like looking at where the convention centers are and stuff like that, and trying to find regionals where I'm not just going to be playing Pokemon and sitting in a hotel room all day. I am going to be able to explore the city, because that is just the best part of every event, is getting to explore the place that you go to.
I'll jump in and give mine just so that John doesn't maybe yoink it. And just I'm gonna keep mine simple. I just really liked the zoo. The zoo was really cool. Hung out with Audie pretty much all day at the zoo, and we had a good time. Airport was close by. See the nails mentioning that, and yeah, I had a good time at San Diego. The places I got food at were good, and yeah, everything was like pretty easy to get to, walkable. There was bus options, so yeah, pretty awesome. All right, now that I stole maybe anything you might say, John, go ahead.
You didn't actually steal us.
Let's go.
I was gonna say that usually I'm a public transit, but after hearing like from one of the people living around there how transit worked, it was like, yeah, this kind of sounds like the way transit works in Indianapolis, which is not good.
Oh no! Oh no!
So I was like, well, I guess it's okay, because I was actually really impressed about how cheap the Ubers were, like
They were?
in general.
Mhm.
I Ubered like maybe 4 or 5 times, not like over the course of the 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, and
Mhm.
every time it was like sub $10, and I was like, wow, this is great, because like at least for me in Indiana, Ubers are expensive as so can't say the
Yeah.
bad benefit, but yeah, it's like they're really expensive because Indianapolis is not like, it's not like a city people really want to go to, so Ubers are not super popular. But the airport being like really close to downtown and everything, hotel being a nice place along the coast, Ubers were like fantastic way to get around. Like if you just needed to go somewhere, or like you were alone, or whether you were people, Uber being cheap as it was like an option. I legitimately was just like, yeah, let's just get that and let's go. Like don't walk, don't figure out transit, just Uber. So aside from that, everything else they already said about like location, like sites and stuff like that, I agree with all that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed San Diego. It's probably my favorite regional location, actually. Like thinking about
Nice.
all the years I've been to regionals, I think San Diego might have been my favorite. Like everything in the area was really nice. There's a bunch of things to do. The weather is nice. That contributes a lot. The weather is really nice. The airport was close. Everything was great. I really enjoyed San Diego. I would like to go back one day.
Same.
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 I didn't even see half the zoo, so I definitely need to go back.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
even go with you guys to the zoo, so I didn't even get to experience that. So like I get to.
You were
if I
too
go
busy
back, I get
winning
to-
money.
True.
Mhm.
That's not entirely true. Gavin lost in top 16 and made it out. So,
All right,
yeah.
you leave me alone.
There's no excuse, Angel. Audie's gonna hound you for it.
You missed out on your own choice. You decided to be a good friend and help people win, and help like Chapa and Co. And we were out here enjoying ourselves like good tourists. Yeah, but yeah, I don't think I see any other questions. So I think that's going to wrap it up. Of course, if you were watching on Twitch, this entire VOD will be available on YouTube on Wednesday at CK49. If you're watching on YouTube, you can watch these live on Mondays on twitch.tv/TubNationTV. That's where we're streaming live right now. And of course, do any of my lovely co-hosts have any final words or shoutouts?
No, I'm just I'll be keeping. I'll be streaming some probably this week, I imagine. And if you want to know when I'm going to be going live, I'll probably just be tweeting that out on my personal Lexicon VGC.
Yeah, I had a fun time at regionals. Everyone I got to hang out with was awesome. So if we hung out over the weekend. Big shout out to you. You guys are great. That's really it. See you guys in Orlando. And also, don't forget, um, just when you're at a regional, just chill out. Don't stress out too much. I saw a lot of people it's like their first tournament and they're all freaking out. It's a nice time to meet people, enjoy yourself. Don't let it get to you and just have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess I'll kind of pitch it and say that with Series 1 ending, I do have like a couple of like team ideas that I'm not going to be able to use at a tournament, but I'm glad to highlight on the in-game ladder sometime this month. So I'll probably tweet about those. You can probably expect one next week. Obviously not in this time slot because this stuff takes time slot, but maybe one in the next week or so, and then maybe another one after that. And then that'll be it for me, seeing Series 1 off. Some undeveloped ideas that I never got to really flesh out.
Oh, sad.
Yeah.
We salute you, Series 1.
We do.
Yep. And so it sounds like, as per usual, Alex is going to be streaming. I'm going to try to stream with my regional team, at least get back to Master Ball, and hopefully play a little more than that now that I'm not starting at Pokeball. That was awful. And John, of course, will also be streaming a little bit. So we're going to have a variety of streams, a bunch of different teams, a bunch of different players coming on, and yeah, so it should be. So if you don't follow right now, make sure to follow. You know, you're going to miss out if you don't. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, I will see you all later.
Peace out, peeps.